Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. This is episode number 161. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined as always by my satiated son, Chris Raygun. Chris, how are you today?
Good. Unsatiated though, because I ordered food and then it didn't come.
Oh,
so I feel really wonderful about that. But
I'm sorry.
Aside from that, not too bad, not too shabby.
Yeah, you're captive now for us. I'm sorry for the next 3 to 4 hours probably. You'll be complaining by the end, and it's all that. Now, I always hated that because once in a blue moon, you'd order, Postmates or something, and it wouldn't come when I was in California. It would just disappear. I've always wondered where those meals went. Was that like the dude that was delivering me my McDonald's one morning and never came? Was he just like, I'm done with this? And
he just quits.
I'm taking the fries with me.
Yeah. And so I've always wondered that. Like, when it doesn't come, did you get the person, were you the person's last straw? Not you yourself, but your order or something. Something happens. Always wondered.
It's like an Uber driver's version of the movie Falling Down. Have you seen that movie where it's like a guy that has like a mental breakdown? He like smashes stuff up and he's like on a rampage from the 90s. It's awesome.
I've never seen.
Isn't that Nicolas Cage?
I don't think so. Maybe.
Who is that? Oh wait, no, it's gonna bother me now.
I'm gonna look it up. It's 1993, starring
Michael Douglas
and Robert Duvall. My dad's favorite. My dad has a Robert Duvall obsession. It's weird. All right. I'm looking at myself in the camera. I have a blemish coming. You can see it. Like, this is going to be a bad one. You can see it coming. It's bothering me a little bit. But what can you do? It's sweaty down here in Virginia.
Nothing.
No, you can't do anything about it. It sucks. And, it's good to know I'm going through puberty now. I'm getting acne at 36 years old.
Finally.
Too.
All right. What are we talking about here? Sacred Symbols, PlayStation podcast, our weekly PlayStation podcast. We really appreciate your support. Many tens of thousands of you listen to the show, and we want to thank you so much for that, and especially thank the people who support us on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia for early ad-free access to this show, exclusive episodes twice a week now for Sacred Symbols called Sacred Symbols Plus. We used to do those once a week. A recent episode we did included, I brought on Rick Hogue, or as I like to call him, Richard Rick Hogue, to talk about the Activision Blizzard situation from a legal point of view. We actually made that video free for everyone immediately because of the subject matter. I'd like to follow up with him. We're going to talk about them in a little while, what's going on over there, and we'll make that episode probably free as well. But we have others coming up, including one I just watched yesterday. Dustin and Ben got together. This was an idea from the audience to kind of give people a behind the scenes look at their jobs and what they do for the shows and all of the rest. And it was really funny. And I watched a little bit of it, kind of scrubbed around, and thought it was very enlightening. So I'm looking forward to that one. So thank you all for your love, kindness, and support over there. Submit your questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas, etc., and so on. Now, we have a few corrections to get through, but before we do that, Aaron Malin wrote in and said, hey guys, first time, long time. Not a question, but I just wanted to say that I really enjoy the fact that you guys don't get games early for discussion on the show. I found that with all the other gaming podcasts I listen to, the conversation around new game releases is done before I've ever had the chance to experience the game. Most recently, with Ratchet & Clank, every other podcast seemed to have their big discussion on the game the week leading up to launch. The following week, when the audience actually was able to play the game, there was barely any mention of it except an acknowledgement that the game was finally out. However, the discussion on Sacred Symbols happened while I was playing and gave me a sense that I was playing alongside the three of you. That was incredibly enjoyable and actually enhanced the experience for me. Just wanted to shout that out and let you all know that I appreciate it the way you do things. Thanks for everything. Thank you, Aaron. I wanted to point this out because, guys, I was thinking about this, about how much of a huge advantage it actually is for us to not, or to kind of just forego access or depending on the company, just not get access. I'm a big sports fan, as you guys know, and it reminds me of like if you were only going to talk about a game before it happened, right? Like part of the zeitgeist and the flavor of a game is the experience that everyone kind of has together with it, whether it's conversational or just with trophies and achievements or online or whatever. And so I wanted to just acknowledge that because I think it's great that that's resonating with people, because I've started to realize that not only is it a stress-free burden for us now to remove, that we don't have to hit embargoes, but that actually the audience kind of likes it. So it's kind of nice. And I just wanted to point that out. I wanted to appreciate Aaron for writing in. And I also wanted to say, guys, thank you all for your kind words about our difficult conversations the last few weeks. I don't know if you guys have seen them or heard from them. I've gotten a lot of DMs A lot of private messages, but of course public messages too. We're talking about difficult situations like China, and we're talking about game manufacture, and we're talking about harassment in the industry and all of this. And we try to take a tactful and comprehensive approach to these things. And so we appreciate that you guys that's resonating with you as well. All right. A couple of other things to correct. I know I'm going on and on here, and we'll get everyone else back in. I just wanted to say, so I've shouted out the site Video Game Chronicle before. Big fan of this site, and it's fun because it's basically just it's a website, a video game website that you would expect from a video game website. It gives you the content that you want, just straight to the point, very little political stuff, breaks a lot of news. Well, we gave him a shout out, and Andy Robinson, who's their editor-in-chief, actually reached out to me, which I appreciated, and he said that he appreciated our shout out, but he wanted to make a point. I talked shit about ReedPop in association with them, as you guys might recall, because I was like, they own them, but this isn't true. Actually, they're just commercial partners with them, and they wanted to point that out. So I wanted to clear the record because they thought that was important enough for me to clarify publicly, and ReedPop obviously sucks. So we wanted to clarify that, and that just makes VGC even better. So thank you, Andy and company over there, for your kind words. And speaking of Andy wrote in, but a different Andy. And he said, "Hey, CDC, I have a correction from last week's episode. Colin, you referred to Hercule Poirot as being French. This is incorrect. He is actually from Belgium. In a few of the adaptations, he is referred to as French by the other characters and is always quick to let them know they are mistaken. Keep up the great work as always." I actually knew this, and you're right. I'm sorry about that. But you have to understand, France and Belgium are essentially the same thing. So
we don't trust anyone from Belgium here, and we would never even work with someone from Belgium ever.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind. Also, tread lightly.
That's our hard line, I think.
Yeah.
Of course, Lockmort is Belgian, but Belgium. So the Low Countries, like the Netherlands and Belgium, they're very quaint. They're like little tiny states, and that's fine.
Apparently
we'll make sure
underwater right now.
They're going to be
flooding.
underwater real soon, I think, unfortunately, just like Florida and other places. So stop polluting. That would be nice as well. But yeah, we wanted to acknowledge that. I refuse to say that name otherwise in the proper French pronunciation. Thank you for writing in. Okay. Boys, I think you're going to like this next question. Edwin Magana wrote in, said, "What's up, Sacred Symbols Clan? I peeked in on my 6-year-old son playing Fortnite. To my surprise, he was trash talking and saying he's been clapping noob cheeks all day. I almost fell down the stairs laughing. I proceeded to walk in and discuss his cheek clapping tendencies. He stated it was simply the act of killing someone in the game. Granted his innocence, I'm worried that if I forbid it, he will seek the true meaning and consequently soil his young mind. Should I leave it alone and let the kid have fun? What do you say, gentlemen?" This is an interesting question. Chris, I want to go to you with this first. He's clapping noob cheeks, the 6-year-old boy in Fortnite. Should Edwin alert his son that he should not say this, or should he just let it go? Because there are dire consequences with both choices, unfortunately. This is a bit of a Hobson's choice.
Let it go. Let it go. I would say, because here's the thing, like, I would be mortified if my dad informed me of something like that and I didn't know what it was, and that would be like an uncomfortable conversation. I never want to have that conversation with my father, even today. So, like, I would say, just let it run its course. He'll find out at school. He'll learn through like a friend or something. It's fine. Also, let's be real for a minute. You're not going to shield your kid from the internet. It's impossible.
Right.
Like, I was seeing shit, insane shit at like 8 years old, like 9 years old, and I was like barely even, and that was when it was remarkably inaccessible. So, like, you don't have to worry about his young mind being soiled. Every young mind is soiled from here on out. Like, it's just the new base for like all humankind going forward. Like, you can't stop it.
It's just funny because it reminds me of just the conversation we had recently about the guy using don't buy the cow when you can get the milk for free in a earnest corporate setting, not realizing that it's somewhat insulting to say that. What do you think about this, Dustin? Do you think Edwin should alert his son? Because he can't obviously clarify for his son. So the only choices are he either steers him away from this and perhaps alerts him as to the ulterior meaning, or it kind of reminds me of when my parents kind of let go of me saying hell and crap at some point. They were like, that's fine. Just don't, like, the workup was like crap, hell, and then you get to shit. You got to cut it off there. You can't say shit, and then you get to like fucking all that kind of stuff. So
Sure.
what do you make about Edwin's problems here?
I think the problem might go much deeper. I mean, Chris is right. You cannot protect your children. I feel like 6 years old might be a little young to be playing Fortnite in public servers by himself in his room, or even at all, because I'm pretty sure, I mean, that is against terms of service. Not that I always stuck to that. I was playing Xbox Live in 5th grade, which was a few years prior. So I get that. But it seems a little, you have no idea what someone's going to say on the other end of that. No idea. So, maybe there needs to be some oversight there. As far as should he explain clapping noob cheeks? No, just don't explain it. Someone else will eventually.
Yeah.
So
sooner rather than later, unfortunately, and that's going to open up a whole can of worms for you. But this is the Hobson's choice that you're in. Okay. If anyone notices anything different in some reason, we've moved over to another. So we used Riverside for a really long time to record the shows. And then and Riverside works great from a fidelity point of view. But we also have this issue of the back end, like the way the files compress and all this kind of stuff. So we moved over to Zencaster. But right. Zencaster is the exact opposite, where like the file, the end result is great, but there's like delay issues. We all have excellent connections. So 10 minutes into that show, we were like, fuck it, let's go back to Riverside. So that's why there's a cut here in case you notice anything. Okay, so the next topic I want to get into is what's going on with Activision Blizzard. Also kind of cursorily more with Ubisoft, although we don't have too many new direct claims about what's going on there. So just to catch everyone up on this in a very brief way, Activision Blizzard is basically being pursued by the state of California after a 2-year investigation into various complaints at the employer. And what they found was a pretty toxic situation that seems to combine something like casual sexism and sexual harassment in certain cases with an unequal treatment of the genders, like men and women being treated differently in terms of their pay and promotional kind of trajectories, which is really important, of course, in the corporate world. And then, of course, and this is something that Rick brought up on our aforementioned video on this, that their third part of the complaint is actually one that people aren't talking about too much, which is that Activision failed to do anything about this stuff. And they went to mediation in California, and then California released their statement. And now, according to Rick, who's a lawyer, he thinks that Activision will do anything they can, including settling monetarily with California to avoid discovery, which means that they will have to open their emails and open like all of their communications and disastrous stuff. And as we know, this could be bad for them for those reasons. But as we saw with Apple and Epic as well, it can open up a whole can of worms as far as their secrets and industry knowledge and all of that, which would be very interesting for us, of course. So my take on this is just listen to the video or watch the video that Rick and I did. It's free for everyone on YouTube. You can also find it on Patreon if you want it in an audio form. And it's like an hour from a lawyer about his kind of opinions on this. But we didn't get Dustin or Chris involved in that show. And so I want to give them an opportunity now, starting with Chris, to give us an opinion on what you make of everything that's happening right now. I saw your recent tweet about the so-called Cosby room that I guess was at BlizzCon.
Yeah.
This is an interesting one in particular. We could talk about it in a little while, but I want to get your take on this. What's happening?
I don't know, man. It feels like, I mean, I tweeted, it just feels like comic book villain shit. Like it's just some of the most comedically, it's almost so egregious in some ways that it doesn't even feel like it could possibly be real, but it is. It's just this weird, there's so much shit that happened, like, and that's been brought to light lately, or through this lawsuit, and just, it brings a lot of other things into context. Like a lot of older videos were circulating about like, there was this one specific panel, I think at like BlizzCon 2010, where some woman went up to the mic and was just like, hey, just curious, when are we going to see like, character designs that don't look like they're coming out of a Victoria's Secret catalog? And they just bullied her like on stage in front of like the entire convention. It's like, dude, like even as somebody, like if you disagreed with the general complaint, just the idea that you would treat like a fan that way is just so weird. Like it's rough, man. It's a rough situation, but I mean, in my opinion, Blizzard hasn't done anything worthwhile in a while, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it sounds like there was an organized walkout. I thought it was kind of interesting because Activision was like, I thought it was totally needless because Activision at that point was like, we support you and we're giving you paid time off for the strike or whatever. And it's like, these are all salaried employees. I don't think they're really looking for like you to support. They're not going to put in the hours, you fucking idiot. You know, that's what I was, I'm like, you ever work in a corporate environment before? You're not punching a clock. You like send an email to someone and they're like, can I take this time off? And then they're like, yeah, let's see. And then they put it in the schedule. They're not going to. So I thought that was a little strange, but they also did write a letter. I think Bobby Kotick wrote in quotes a letter, 40-year CEO, of course, of Activision, apologizing for their tone deaf response to it in terms of some things that came from their C-suite and all of the rest. There's a lot to get into there. The BlizzCon thing I thought was interesting because they're claiming, the guys that are involved in this were claiming that the Cosby Room, so-called, was named after the, as we all know in hotels, the ridiculous rugs that look like Cosby sweaters. I kind of get the connection, but of course the connection now is horrifying. But their claim, and I want to hear this claim because it's what I actually thought as well, was I was like, this was before everyone knew about Cosby. So it was, I guess, obviously Hannibal Buress knew about him, and it was in maybe comedian circles and entertainment circles, but I didn't, because I remember watching something in 2013 that I think he put out on Netflix. So, and I remember it being bad, actually. I remember being like, wow, Bill Cosby is just done. And so I want to say that, like, I wish that we knew more about what was true and what was false, but it seems like it was a completely inappropriate environment nonetheless. Dustin, what do you make of what's happening over there at Activision Blizzard and UB and all the rest?
You brought up exactly what I was thinking, and that's, I mean, some of this, a lot of it seems cut and dry, but it's more difficult. You brought up the Cosby thing, and that photo was supposed to be from 2013, and to my understanding, the Cosby allegations didn't become mainstream until closer to 2015. And like you said, it was maybe going around in some circles or known within the industry, but it wasn't in the public conscience at the time. Mm-hmm. Does that mean that bad stuff didn't happen? Like, there was the screenshot of the text, which, like, first of all, the fact they shared that text publicly even back then is still kind of like, even if it's let's just say it was all a joke.
Right.
That's still not the type of joke that you share online.
Insane.
Just insane. So it's like, the waters are so murky and mixed up. And I'm not saying like, we don't know if any wrongdoing. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that people, when they were jumping on this on Twitter about the Cosby thing, I'm like, yes, it's bad. It's not necessarily bad because of that. I saw other people talking about the sweater carpet. Like, people have posted pictures of the carpet. It's funny how in depth people have posted pictures of the carpet, and it does look like a weird sweater thing. So I do believe them when that's the reason behind the naming. But
yeah, because imagine, like, are they? This is the one thing I wanted to say, where I was like, would they really bring it's like a portrait of the Pope, basically, or like, you know, but they have like a portrait of Bill Cosby that they bring with them to these, and they're just flaunting it that much. That's the one thing where I feel like, all right, I don't know that that's what it seems, but what's clear, to your point, Dustin, is some pretty heinous sounding stuff going on, including something that I think Activision swept under the rug, which was the suicide of this girl. Apparently, this woman on a work trip happened in part because I read that the guy brought sex toys with him on the trip, and that pictures of her were circulating amongst people at Activision. So it's like, what the fuck? What is going on? That's totally unacceptable. Yeah. I think I cut you off, though. I'm sorry, Dustin.
No, I think I think you summed it up nicely there, is that I think that the question with this lawsuit that's going to come down is just that, how aware was leadership at Activision Blizzard? Did they take steps to do anything about certain instances, or were things swept under the rug? There's always going to be bad people that work at large companies. The question is whether or not the rules are enforced, or if leadership is maybe even taking part in some of these things. So I'm glad that we have a resource in Hogue that is so knowledgeable about that and can kind of steer us the right way.
It's a mess, but I do want to say though, I feel like a lot of I think a big reason why this is exploding in the way that it is because Blizzard and Activision Blizzard as a single entity has just lost a lot of the benefit of the doubt, because we know how they react to things that are true. We know how they reacted to Blitzchung and how they just didn't really apologize for that, even though it was very clear what happened and very clear what everybody was upset about. So when they say things like, the California suit against us is irresponsible and nothing untoward happened or whatever, it's like, well, we know that you've already displayed a tendency to be outwardly dishonest. So what reason is there to believe you at face value on this front, especially when this is not a particularly unbelievable thing that's happening? Like, it's not like it's uncommon in the industry or uncommon in general. Like, it's a pretty documented thing that's happened time and time again. It's several other publishers. So like, why would the people that like treated the Blitzchung situation the way they did, why would they be exempt from this specific litany of allegations? Like, they don't have the benefit of the doubt of the community anymore in the same way that they might have in 2013 or 2010 or even 2015 or 2016 when Overwatch was popping. They just don't have that.
Yeah, I was going to say, just to remind everyone, if they don't know, the Blitzchung thing was about, I think, Hearthstone and kind of Blizzard stepping in to suspend this pro Hong Kong streamer, I think, or commentator that to kind of appease the Chinese forces that be, stopping their game from being streamed and played in China. Dustin, do you have something else to add?
No.
You look eager. Like, sometimes you look so attentive.
I'm listening.
That I almost want to kick it over to you. I'm like, he has something to say.
No,
He's something on his mind.
No, you covered it. Blizzard, I was saying this to Ben the other day. I'm like, they have had a horrible 12 to 24 months, and it just does not seem to be getting better. And seems like a lot of it's justified, but who knows?
Yeah, we'll see. I'm skeptical of anything Activision says ultimately. I did say in our conversation with Hogue that I am intrigued by Activision's bullishness, because they've known this has been coming for a while. They were in mediation privately, so they knew, and they still released a statement, and it's their right to say, like, we're going to defend ourselves. We don't feel like a lot of this is in context. And I was saying to Hogue, I'm like, what is that all about? Does that indicate that they know that California is activist in some way, or does that know, and so they feel like they can just pierce a hole in it and be done with this, or is that them saying like we have a real defense of this? I'm skeptical that they do, I'm skeptical they have a defense of some of it, considering the pictures we've seen from Blizzard. I don't know what's going on. It's interesting. You're not hearing, I mean, I don't know if I'm missing it, but you're not hearing much about like Raven or Treyarch or Beenox or any of the other former current studios. It's really Blizzard and Activision, the publisher. So I'll be interested to see more. We'll be keeping an eye out. Like I said earlier in the show, we'll probably have Rick on soon again to just kind of reassess everything with all the new information. Because unfortunately, when we put that video up, like a day or two later, there was a whole new deluge. Another chapter, as it were. So we'll keep an eye out for that. I have a confession. I took French for like 6 years of my life, in middle school and high school, and even 2 semesters in college. But I was always just studying for the next test, and it's not like I used the language much outside of the classroom either. So these many years later, it's all kind of gone. That's why I was so intrigued by Babbel, the #1 selling language learning app that focuses and even gamifies learning a foreign language. A far cry from the dry book learning and rote memorization and regurgitation we all suffered through. Since I have familiarity with French, I decided to delve into Babbel's French lessons, though you'll have 14 languages to choose from Italian to Spanish to Turkish. I really dig how customizable Babbel is even from the get-go. You can tell the app how much of the language you already know. You can skip ahead to future lessons if you're feeling confident, or stick behind with older fare if you're less certain, and more. And I like how learning feels like playing a game, revolving around real-world uses and actual vocabulary, as opposed to what a textbook alone thinks you should learn. And it's especially cool that Babbel was created by more than 100 real-life language experts, as opposed to the AI-driven lesson plans found with other apps and courses. With things getting a bit more normal out there, it's time to start traveling again, experiencing new cultures and learning a little bit about the local language. Babbel can be a great tool for that. Or you can use it like I have, just to brush up on what I already know and remind myself of how little I actually remember. If I put the time and effort in, though, Babbel will have me back at fighting French shape, and they can do the same for you with their 15-minute lessons spanning more than a dozen global languages. So try Babbel for yourself. Head to Babbel.com, that's Babbel.com, and use the code SACRED, that's SACRED, at checkout. There you can get a 3-month subscription of Babbel, and with the use of our handy code, get an additional 3 months for free. That's 6 months of language lessons for the price of 3 at Babbel.com with the checkout code SACRED. Diversify your language skills and enhance your interaction with the world at Babbel.com with the checkout code SACRED. That's Babbel.com. All right, guys, Abandoned, real-time experience only for PlayStation 5. This apparently has been published, and I was reading there... I'll get it later this weekend. I don't care right now, but I was reading their tweet from just a few hours ago when we were recording this, and it says, the real-time experience is live to preload worldwide, except for Japan and China. For those who can't find the app, here are some instructions. In the PS Store, head over to Collections, then Abandoned, and then you, so you have to, go into this weird, I don't know. I don't know. We have this letter from... Zach Apuzzo said, "Dear blue balled bitches, Blue Box has once again stirred the pot with their latest Twitter stunt. How, in any stretch of the imagination, is the blurred eye patch wearing man behind the Abandoned logo not Big Boss or Venom or Solidus Snake? What is going on here? Also, the blurred letters above the Abandoned logo could very well spell Welcome to Silent Hill in a very Kojima-esque style. What is going on here?" he asks again. Now, the weirder thing about this, when I saw that picture, I was like, yeah, I was when I saw that picture, I was so mad.
Yeah.
That I was like, because I'm not even a huge Metal Gear fan anymore. And I'm like, come on, man, that's Big Boss. That's Big Boss. And then someone sent me an image of a man with an eye patch from the Epic Game Store. And it is that character. So not only are they using, again, a pre-made asset, which no games do that are worth anything that PlayStation would want or whatever, but they made it so that he looks like a Metal Gear character that everyone knows. Chris, what are your thoughts now?
It's infuriating. I was also just annoyed. It's almost like I don't even believe this is Kojima anymore because it's too annoying. It's not. Yeah, it's an interesting point. It's devoid of joy for me. It's irritating, the fact that they still have this fucking tweet that's pinned to their profile. That's like, we want to set things straight. We have no relations with Konami. Silent Hill is owned by Konami. It's like, that's still their main tweet, the one that's pinned to the top of the profile, and they're like, here's a blurry guy with an eye patch. I don't like these guys. Whatever this is, I don't care. Sincerely, it's annoying at this point. It's not cute. It's not fun. It's not interesting. It's just a nuisance. Stop it.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. It's my mind kind of went there too, where I'm like, Kojima wouldn't be this annoying. And this obvious. This isn't fun. This isn't something I don't know. You look at him, the patch is. I actually looked. The patch is even on the right side, the proper side for Big Boss. So. Dustin, where's your mind on the Abandoned real-time experience only for PlayStation 4?
So I downloaded the app, the preload for the app today, and it uses the same images from the asset flip that Hassan said, oh no, that's just something cheap we put together. Then why are you still using the images from it on the app that you're so excited about? That doesn't make any sense. So with this Big Boss thing, people have now begun to speculate, well, maybe this goes beyond just Silent Hill. Maybe this goes to, abandon means the abandoned IP from Konami. And this is Sony's marketing stunt to be like, yo, we got Metal Gear, the Blue Point remake we've been hearing. Here it is. Here is Silent Hills, and it's partnering with Kojima. Here it is. Big conspiracy theory stuff here. Like this, that's like full on metal, tinfoil hat stuff. You got to be careful though. I mean, dude, the thing with they're either we've been saying this over and over again, but I think it's important to iterate. Either this is the craziest weird meta level marketing that has ever happened, or Hassan is a fucking idiot and is just like burning the earth to the ground and is ready to be I don't want to say, like, we wouldn't wish harassment or attacks on anybody, but when you do this stuff, it's like I at least understand why it's happening. So I don't know, but it just needs to happen at this point.
Konami is coming back to life. We see it. And there's something interesting, Chris, that I noticed on the abandoned. So it's the abandoned real-time experience only for PS5. Now, I've put out 2 trailers or multiple trailers for the 2 games I've worked on. We use the logos. The logos have their own trademark things after them, and you have to keep them all in. There's all these rules. But they, at the bottom of their trailer, they have the circular copyright 2021 blue box Game Studios, and then it says PlayStation Family Mark and PS5 logo are registered trademarks or trademarks. What I don't know, Sony Interactive Entertainment Inc. And I'm like, that's something Sony puts on the bottom of the trailers that they like approve and that they stamp themselves that are not necessarily from their own IP. So they are involved in this. Like, I feel like their silence on if I were them, I'd come out and say, like, people are going to be really mad if this isn't what it is. And if you see a partner doing this shit over and over again, at some point you got to be like, you can't, like, I don't know what you're thinking. Your game has nothing to do with this stuff. And now you put out an image of basically Big Boss and text that looks like it does say welcome to Silent Hill above it. Like, I don't know what else to say here. So I am also angry about this, but I am so intrigued by it because I feel like it's got to be something. I can't help but put the equation together. Like, this vaunted August event we said might have been delayed because of Call of Duty and all these other things. Konami coming back to life. And that's why I kept telling you, Dustin, to keep going, because what would be the next franchise to come up would be Castlevania. And there is a recent ratings leak for a Castlevania collection that they've not acknowledged. Right. So it could be part of that as well. And I don't know.
Right. Well,
I don't know.
Sony has stepped in, specifically that Symphony of the Night port with Rondo of Blood. That was a Sony specific port because they paid for it, and they used I want to say it was like the PSP version of something. But so Sony has had their filthy little hands on Castlevania recently in some capacity.
And Metal Gear was a PlayStation centric or PlayStation exclusive franchise from Metal Gear Solid to Metal Gear Solid 4, so it's not like they don't have some sort of connection there. The games came out later to Xbox. The original Metal Gear, I don't think ever came out on anything else other than like the original Metal Gear Solid. Obviously, Metal Gear and Metal Gear 2 are different games. So they have a relationship there. They're well established with each other. Of course, Konami is friendly with everyone. The Castlevania Advanced and DS games are Nintendo games, so we'll see what happens. But I don't know. I just don't know. But there's more, because Nick M wrote in and said, you all see Norman Reedus' Instagram post with him and Robbie the Rabbit from Silent Hill, Chris?
I did see it. It's a really unsettling image too, because it's like the what is it? The resolution of it is so fucked. I don't know, man. I'm just annoyed. I don't care. Just tell us what the fuck. I'm tired of the game. The metagame here. It's not fun. It's drawn out. It's too windy. And there's no way. Look, there is no way that whatever this is going to be worth this amount of, like, just tedium. Like, it's just not, even if it's like some insane shit. Like, oh, hey, here's a Konami collection. It's fully remastered. It's like, okay, cool. Like, I don't know what do you think they think justifies this? You know? Because I can't imagine it. I really can't.
Yeah,
Maybe that's just me, but
I can't help but also avoid this thing with Twitter guys where I'm reading. I've been in the industry for like almost 20 years. I've interacted with a lot of people from around the world. I've interacted with a whole lot of Japanese people, Japanese native speakers, and Japanese people that learn English, and kind of the awkwardness of English spoken by different people around the world, right? And how that kind of plays out. And that's just the way it is, right? So a European learning English might sound or make certain mistakes. A Japanese person learning English might sound a little bit differently and make some different mistakes. And I say that only because if you read the Twitter account, it reads like someone writing English from, you know how we make fun of Japanese, like the translations for Japanese shit all the time, like please be excited and all of that. I guess that's what I'm saying. If you read their Twitter account, it reads like that. Like, all content from the real-time experience can be found online, can also be found online on YouTube and from our website as a HQ video. But we recommend PS5 owners to experience all of it through the app for the best experience. This, you don't understand what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
yeah, it's written a little weirdly.
Right. And it's written in the weird kind of English isn't your native language kind of situation. And Hassan that we saw speaks English much more effortlessly than that. It's not as awkward, So I just made that connection too, and I thought it was interesting. I don't know if it's true or not, but I don't know. It's fun. I agree with you guys. The stakes are so high now that it must be something big, or it is going to be disastrous for them.
Yeah.
No one else. It's not going to be disastrous for anyone else but them. So something to keep in mind. Oh, Dustin, what did you think of the Norman Reedus thing? So this rabbit character apparently is from Silent Hill 3.
Right. Yeah. Well, the weird thing about that post was it looks like he screen captured it, because you can see there's like an Instagram branding thing on it that appears twice, like a button almost. I don't remember exactly what it is.
Yeah.
So he either saw it and was like, ooh, this would be fun to post, but I don't think he credited whoever did it. It was just like slightly odd. And it's like, I don't know, maybe Norman Reedus is totally out of the loop, but I also don't really believe that either.
I doubt that. Yeah, I doubt it.
So, and well, people were like, oh, look, Kojima liked the picture. And I'm like, how much you want to bet Kojima likes all of his stuff? Kojima has his boys that he supports his boys. He goes out for them. So I'm willing to bet that Kojima liked all of his tweets or his Instagram posts. Maybe not though.
Yeah.
Okay. One other thing I wanted to bring up here. There are a couple other things I wanted to bring up, I guess. We'll let Anu Sakani introduce it, though. He says, Heidi Ho, Sacred Symbols crew. The existence of a new studio was confirmed. That's No Moon, from Activision and PlayStation alumni. They also confirmed their first game will be a narrative-driven third-person action-adventure title, and they also received a $100 million investment from Smilegate. I have to ask, what do you think they're cooking up? The name has some people guessing this is a Star Wars game, but I'm always down for a new IP myself. Keep up the phenomenal work, you three. Much love from the Pacific Northwest. So That's No Moon, of course, is a reference to Star Wars: A New Hope. I don't think that means that it's a Star Wars studio. I actually think I think it's a pretty bad name, actually.
I agree,
but
I think it's annoying.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
Smilegate is a Korean publisher of games, very big and well respected over there, and of course they have their tendrils and stuff over here. We know them most for Crossfire and a lot of the stuff that's happening with Xbox, but they founded the studio, and I was looking at it. There are some notable people in it. Taylor Kurosaki is there, and he was a longtime Naughty Dog exec that worked on Uncharted and The Last of Us. Michael Mumbauer's over there, and you might remember him. He was the director of basically the Phantom San Diego studio that was working on The Last of Us remake and Uncharted and all that weird shit that never happened. So he's kind of like in a directorial role. So there's a lot of people over there. Dustin, does this do anything for you? I was originally going to write it up, and then I'm like, I don't want to be your marketing tool to get people hyped for your studio that's going to release a game in 4 years. We'll let everyone know you exist, but
right.
I don't know that it's more notable than that.
I think we touched on it. The name, I just don't. I like names that are like an homage to something. This one is too on the nose for me. Like, I feel like maybe No Moon Studios would have been better, but I don't know. It's just a name, so it doesn't really matter.
That's true. And I've said in the past that I hate the name Naughty Dog. I hate it. But
I don't really like that either.
It doesn't mean. Yeah. Because I don't know. I don't like that name. But Chris, what do you make of this? That's No Moon Studio.
I mean, what do we have to go on, you know? Like, they say they're making a narrative-driven third-person action adventure title, which sounds like a PlayStation game, so, I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't know what I can be. I can't be excited. I can't even really be disinterested. It's almost like a lack of anything that I feel, especially with the name. Granted, not that big of a deal, but I can't get that excited or interested in this. This is just the same thing as all these other studios that are announced like way before there's really anything to show. It's like, just tell me when you got something. Whatever. At least they didn't at least this wasn't like some kind of like big thing. It wasn't like, hey, that's No Moon. We're here. We're on the scene now. At least it wasn't like that. And it was just like, all right, here's, this exists. But I don't care about this at all. Maybe I'll care when they have something.
They did do I agree with you, Chris, because they did do a very focused, or seem to do a very focused reveal of the studio to games industry publications, right, like GamesIndustry.biz and others, because there's like a really pretentious picture. I don't know if you guys saw of like the 20 of them or whatever, like in a warehouse. And so it's like, it's cool. Also, there's like, they're all wearing like really dark colors, and then one guy is wearing a bright white bluish button down, and it annoys the shit out of me. Like, he didn't get the memo that they were clearly all supposed to wear dark clothes for the picture. But yeah, I agree. We'll see what happens. I'm actually most interested because of not only the talent involved, which is neither here nor there, really. We'll see what they can do together. But Smilegate is a totally welcome company to continue to invest. South Korean. Yeah. Crossfire is very well regarded, and it seems like they want to get involved in making core games themselves. Obviously, they're working with Remedy on a core game in the Crossfire universe, but I thought that was kind of nice. On the back of a bunch of bad news about malign investors getting involved, it's cool too. It's like, oh, Smilegate's here, with $100 million. Quaint, but something. Chris, this one's for you too. Just to remind everyone, Back 4 Blood open beta starts soon, PS4 and PS5. If you have PlayStation Plus, you can start playing on August 12th, but if you pre-order the game, you can start playing on August 5th. Are you going to get involved, Chris?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, without a doubt. I'm so excited. I'll probably wait for the for the open beta to start, because I just try not to pre-order things, but no, I'm looking way forward to this. Like, this looks so good. I hope it's as fun as it looks. That is my one thing. It's like you can never really tell with like trailers and stuff. It's all about the way something feels. So like it looks the part. It looks like a new Left 4 Dead. I'm excited about it. I just hope they can nail that the feel of it.
What are you feeling, Dustin? Are you interested in this game at all?
Yeah. So I'm with Chris. I'm not gonna do the pre-order for the early access, but dude, I saw there's a new trailer that they put out announcing this open beta, and it just looks so fun. It showed like some of the humans versus zombies mode, which is like amazing in Left 4 Dead. I loved that mode, and I'm just already thinking about getting 8 people together to do the humans versus zombies is going to be super fun. So I'm excited. Check it out.
Chris, I wanted to kick it back to you too. Did you get into the Halo test?
I did. That's supposed to go live later today. So
okay. So it hasn't happened. It hasn't happened.
It hasn't happened.
So you've gotten your invite or whatever, and so are you excited?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm curious. I've been waiting for this for a long time, so we'll see how it goes. I'll be blunt as hell about it.
It's gonna suck. It's going to be horrible. It's going to be the worst game ever. Definitely not related to the fact that they didn't invite me. But, you're going to have a horrible weekend. It's not going to live up to your dreams. I'm sorry.
I'm fully expecting it not even to... It's probably not even going to load for, like, the first day, It seems like one of those where it's like, people are going to be breaking this thing. So, but yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Well, we'll check in with you next week and get a better take on that, or a better informed take on that, as opposed to just your promise of bluntness, which, of course, you will be. Finally, I thought you guys might enjoy this. Sean Mason wrote in and said, "Hey, CDC, who will be the last man standing in video game titles, John Madden or Tom Clancy?" Chris, so Tom Clancy's dead. John Madden's not dead, but he will die soon. He's got to be... I mean, let's see here. John Madden...
Oh, 85.
He was born in 1936. He's 85, so he might be healthy. I mean, maybe he's got 5, 10, 15 years. But
I know you were just stating a fact, but just like John Madden will die.
The mortality of John Madden is guaranteed.
Not up for debate.
So Madden is huge. It's the second biggest EA Sports franchise behind FIFA, and then of course, Tom Clancy is everything for Ubisoft. Dustin, who's going to survive longer? Like, so play it out decades. Will people be playing Tom Clancy's, or will they be playing Madden NFL? Fart noise. Insert name or number where fart noise was.
I mean, John Madden still has time to do something horrible that could, get him, outed. Like Tiger. Well, they put Tiger Woods back on the games. They took him off for a little bit.
Yeah, well, he signed with 2K.
Yeah,
and remember he used to do EA, so it was like a big. It's a big.
So
we're going to talk about that in a little while, actually.
But my gut says we will see more Tom Clancy games than John Madden. I think John Madden, give it, after he dies, maybe another 10 years, and then he'll be out. But maybe they'll replace him with someone else. But he's such a legacy with that brand too.
That's what I'm saying. Like I don't know about that, because people call, FIFA, NHL, Madden, right? Like they don't call it NFL football or NFL. They call it Madden. I think Madden will be the name forever. I think Tom Clancy might stick around I think we're looking at decades out, by the way, these names still being used. Chris, what is your take on this, Madden versus Clancy?
I think Madden will definitely outlast, because Tom Clancy is so clearly a name, and I feel like at some point they might actually be like, it's probably, we're not really seeing any benefit from using Tom Clancy's name, because what benefit really could there be at this point, especially because they continue to devalue what that branding even means. Like, I almost feel like they're intentionally devaluing the brand so they can stop using it, almost. Because it's like, why not just The Division? Like, why not, why not, whatever, I can't even think of the other fucking, what is it, Rainbow Six? Is it Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six? It's not, right?
No, it is. That's the point, is that all of these things are, because remember, it began with like more, it began with the Clancy classics, right? Like Red Storm Rising. I mean, that's where Red Storm Entertainment came from. And we had stuff like Hunt for Red October and like the Clancy classics. And then, they started getting in because he wrote Rainbow Six, he wrote all this other stuff, and that's where all these series come from. But I think you're right, Chris, because I think this is the key point in what I was saying to Dustin. No one, as far as I know, I started playing Clancy games probably with Rainbow Six and Rainbow Six 3, especially on Xbox. No one in my life ever called it like, oh, you want to play Clancy, or you want to play Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six, or you want to play you say like you want to play SOCOM, like in that world, right? You want to play Siege, you want to play Madden. It's like Kleenex, right? It's just Madden means football game.
You could actually argue that Madden means football more than football does, because football to a lot of people means soccer. Yes. But no one thinks that Madden means anything else other than American football, which is a terrifying realization that I just had.
That's an excellent point. Excellent point. And very true. Yeah, we should almost start it as a vernacular, just referring to it as Madden, so people know what we're talking about. So I don't have to use words like footy or anything like that. I'm not saying that. No, well, I just did say it, I guess, so it's a little late.
Footy.
Yeah, that's what that's like a nickname for soccer. Football,
right.
Footy.
Well, if soccer is footy, then does that make football handy? In a way.
Oh man,
I don't know.
Just have contempt for this
Something to think about.
Speaking of contempt, how much contempt? I mean, I read what you said, but how much contempt did that fish picture and that video of the fish. I tweeted this video. Yeah.
Dude, Colin sent me this horrifying image of a fish with like human teeth. And and keep in mind, I've seen images of this before. Like, I'm no stranger to the internet. I know what Google is. But to just have that foisted upon me with no context, you just said my name. That was it. Just to alert me to, and it's a video, not just a low res image, a video of a man like with a knife, like just like pulling its gums up to get like a good look at. Like, it's such a heinous fucking creation that it ruined my day, quite frankly. Like, it just like completely like offset every good vibe that I had that day.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that to you. I watched that video 100 times probably. Just in mesmeration. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. That fish has human teeth.
Yeah.
It has human teeth.
Yeah, they're disgusting, as is anything that comes out of the ocean, quite frankly. Like, it's just a sick place.
I'm glad to rather beat that horse into the ground and just remind everyone, and I'll throw it into the ocean itself, the fucking corpse of the horse. Because I don't care about the ocean. I've said before, it should boil away. And so all of the creatures in it are killed. And only then will we have true freedom on this planet. Dustin, look at the video if you dare.
No, I'm good. I momentarily went to Twitter and then thought, do I really need that in my life today? And the answer, no.
You thought
Don't
twice
worry,
about
Dustin. I'll send it to you.
Okay. And at like 2 a.m., text from Chris.
Yeah, send it at the most inopportune time, please.
I will.
There's something undoubtedly tantalizing about the unknown. There's something especially tantalizing about the unknown when it comes in the form of something called the Box of Awesome. Box of Awesome is a super intriguing subscription box, but it's designed to be much more open-ended, adventurous, and out of the ordinary when compared to your more typical subscription boxes. There's nothing wrong with those, of course. It's cool to get razors and food and all the rest. But Bespoke Post's Box of Awesome is different, because it attempts to get to know you and then deliver items you may never have heard of, been exposed to, or even knew you wanted based on your preferences. It's easy. First, you go to boxofawesome.com. That's BOXOFAWESOME.com. When you arrive, you'll be greeted with a brief questionnaire that'll ask you about yourself, about your likes, and more. Then they'll find cool items to include in your monthly box, ranging from sunglasses and ties to corkscrews and cigars. That last item sounds especially good to me, perhaps thrown in with some mixology goods to up my cocktail game. Better yet, there's stuff for both men and women, catering to all. Are you interested in kitchenware and cooking supplies? Box of Awesome has you covered. Do you need toiletries? Box of Awesome has you covered. Clothing, shoes, accessories, on and on and on. Box of Awesome has you covered. And since they come each month, you'll always be greeted with something new and exciting, though you can vet all of your boxes and pause or cancel your membership anytime. Each box only costs $45, but will have more like $70 worth of gear within. And Bespoke Post manages to do this by working with smaller, up-and-coming brands, bringing them great exposure and awesome items. My eyes are especially drawn to the liquor and the knives and the food, but you may be drawn to the grooming items or travel gear and more. There's a lot here, so check it out for yourself. To get 20% off your first monthly box, head to boxofawesome.com and use the checkout code SACRED. That's SACRED. That's boxofawesome.com with the checkout code SACRED for 20% off your first Box of Awesome. All right, guys, let's get into what we're playing. Chris, we'll kick it over to you. It says you're playing Dying Light.
Yeah, I'm still I'm still jumping into Dying Light, still doing some co-op with some friends of mine over on PC, just because, I got a lot of planning to do. I'm moving soon, so, and also just I'm super busy outside of that. So, like, I keep trying to start a Plague Tale, but I can just tell, like, I'm never, like, I gotta start it when I'm, like, in a good zone, and I have, like, a night that's free of worry, which is very rare. Just so I can like sit down and absorb it, because I know it's a very atmosphere heavy experience, and I'm fully expecting to, not necessarily be grabbed by a gameplay first experience when I play a Plague Tale. So I need to tailor myself to that, but I'm working towards it. But for right now, I'm still playing Dying Light co-op. It's fun, man. Like it kind of bothers me that it took me this long to realize how fun it was, because Colin would always talk about it. And I tried it a while ago, and I don't know, I wasn't feeling it. Like, it was just the single player was like, the story was just a little annoying. It got in my way a lot. But playing with friends is like sincerely freeing, because you don't have to worry about what the game's trying to tell you as like a narrative. It's like it lets you focus on the gameplay, and the gameplay's really strong, and it's really enjoyable. It's such a good free roam game as well. Like, you just feel so free to move around, and it's engaging, and like melee combat feels so good. I wish more games would copy that melee combat, because it feels so chunky and like meaty. It's so good. But I don't have anything else that new to say about it. I'm not that much further into it. I really spend a lot of my time dicking around and just jumping and doing stupid hardcore parkour around
that's the best part of the game, dude. I mean, when that game came out, I said it at the time. It was when we had just started Kind of Funny. I think I was like, this game is extraordinary. Like, I don't know why, and it has quietly sold like 10 million copies or something, so it's like a huge hit. But I was like, this game is more fun than it seems, and more fun than it has the right to be. And I think that gameplay, it's just shot, like when you hear about it and you're like, it's first person parkour and you have to use the triggers and shit. I'm like, oh my God. I actually remember turning it on and immediately trying to change the controls, because I was like, that just doesn't even sound right to me. And then you realize, as I've said in the past, let the game suggest to you how it wants you to play, because you find that is the most natural motion. And this game is all about the motion of grabbing and stuff like that. And it's great. And you know what else is cool about it? I think it's supposed to take place in Turkey, or like a Turkish-like place, and you don't see games take place in a Middle Eastern, or let's say more Mediterranean type setting. Yeah. So I like that. I'm glad you're enjoying it, and we'll keep an eye out for the sequel, which comes out in December if all things go according to plan. Long time in coming. Dustin, you're playing a trio of games, so I'll let you read them off and talk about them at your leisure.
Sure. So I finished Plague Tale, and this game kind of got worse by the end. And what's funny is when I tweeted about finishing it, I found that to be a very common thing, is a lot of people were saying like, yeah, it becomes more frustrating. It leans more into its gameplay, which is the weakest part of the game, unfortunately, and can become very frustrating. It is still, I think, if you are into stealth and are intrigued by the setting and the world, it is a game worth playing, for sure. I really like the story, and most of all, I'm excited for the sequel, where they can kind of iron out some of these things that weren't so good about the original. But either way, it's a nice AA experience that won't take you too long, that, you know, if you're interested, check it out, but maybe not for everybody. The other games that I'm playing are two indie games, one of them being Trigger Witch, which that game is out now, right, Colin? So we can fully talk about it. Okay. Yep. So this game is a twin stick shooter that is about a group of witches that no longer use magic, but they use guns instead. And it is really fun. It has like this nice, almost Zelda-esque overworld where you're going around and going to these different biomes and collecting things. And it's good. It's very like the twin stick shooting. That's the one thing that I was like, okay, is this, sometimes I've played some twin stick games where I'm like, this isn't really doing it quite for me. But it's nice in the way that you unlock new weapons as you go and as you play, and then you can kind of like vary up your play style. And Colin, this is one that you're playing as well right now, right?
Yeah, I'm only 5 hours in or whatever, so I'm about halfway to the platinum. I'll talk a little bit more about why that is, but yeah, I'm charmed by this game. It is written by a friend of the show, John O'Peck, and put out by friends of the show, Rainbite. And they put out Reverie, which was their previous game, and a game I really loved. It was kind of like a mini Zelda and like a bite-sized Zelda game, and it was awesome. Trigger Witch is longer and meatier, but I find it very charming. I find the characterizations really good. I find the writing really well done, and the gameplay is engaging. I actually think I stopped it because I was just frustrated one night, and I think I was just getting tired where I couldn't find a key that I needed or something in some place I was in, and I was like, I'll just deal with this another time. But I really like it, and I think it's $15, which I feel is a totally appropriate price for a game like that. If anything, a little cheap for what it is. So yeah, very well done to them, and I'm wishing them the best on that. that property.
Right.
And it's worth noting that that's one of the very few games we accepted early codes for because we are friends with them.
Right. The other game I decided to pick up on a whim, and it's called Ender Lily's Quietus of the Nights.
I've heard good things about this one.
It's a bit of a name there, but what intrigued me about this is I saw this on the PlayStation Store, and I was like, this looks kind of cool. It's got a nice anime aesthetic that isn't too much in your face, but it looks pleasant. And so I went to the Steam page and saw that it had overwhelmingly positive reviews. And I thought, well, no one I've really heard, I haven't seen anyone tweet or talk about this game. I'm just going to give it a go. And this game is very good, really fun. It's a Metroidvania game that reminds me a lot of either Castlevania or even
it looks like Hollow Knight.
Bloodstained. And Hollow, dude,
yeah.
It's got a lot of elements of, Hollow Knight, Castlevania, things like that. The core mechanic about it is that you play this little girl, and the little girl doesn't actually do any of the attacks. It's these spirit ghost guys that hang around her that actually do the attacks. And so as you play, you unlock more spirits that can come along with you. And so you have like a main attack that I have like two different ones that you can switch between, two different spirits. And then you have interchangeable secondary attacks that you unlock either throughout the world or by beating bosses. And so it really has this interesting level of customization where you can have different spirits and you can level them up separately, and they have different types. Like one might be like an AoE type attack. One might be like, I have one that's like a bird that flies around me and shoots stuff at people. But it's surprisingly at some points, pretty difficult as well. But what's nice is that it does have a lot of RPG type mechanics. So if you're getting, totally destroyed, you can go level up a bit and then come back. But for fans of Metroidvanias or fans of Hollow Knight, this is definitely one to check out. I think it's $25. I'm about 3 or 4 hours in, and I'm very much enjoying it.
It looks great. And it's one of those games, like we say, we try to say every game's name once or twice on the show, at least letting people know it's announced and when it's coming out in the wrap-up at the end of the news. And this is a game that was one of those names. And yeah, so a few people pointed me towards it as well, and it looks great. And it reminded me a lot of Hollow Knight. I was clickety-clacking over here because I was trying to figure out what you're describing. I don't know which Castlevania it is because they're all kind of the same on GBA and DS, or they all blur together anyway. But there's one of them where when you beat enemies, they drop cards, and you equip the cards on you, and they attack on your behalf.
Oh,
and
yeah.
So it reminds me a little bit of that. So it looks like this game is kind of inspired. I think this game's clearly inspired by Hollow Knight, although I don't want to necessarily make that assumption. But it sounds like maybe they took that kind of that one Castlevania game's passive attack system and put it in here as well. I'm looking at the video of it right now on Steam. It looks awesome.
Yeah, it's it's clear the Hollow Knight inspiration, the fact that not all of them, but many of the save points are like benches, which I'm pretty sure that's exact Hollow Knight. Like you sit at like a bench and rest for a moment. They're not all benches in this game, but as soon as I saw that, I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
But it's good. I like it. I think it's on Switch also. It's like available. I don't know if it's on Xbox, but it's all over the place. I got it on PlayStation though, so.
This looks like a really good Switch game.
Yeah. It looks like it would be great on Switch. All right, so I'm playing 2 games right now. One I'm playing is Perils of Baking, which is my studio Lilymo's first game, but I didn't work on it. I'm not going to get too deep into it, but we're basically redoing a bunch of it, and so I'm playing through it, kind of trying to figure out what I'm going to do. And I was talking to Barry a couple days ago because I had a total revelation when I was playing it the other night in bed. And so we're excited about that. So I'm just messing around with that on Vita because I never platinumed it there. And yeah, otherwise I'm playing Trigger Witch. But I must say, the last week or 10 days, I've not played very much at all. And it's one of those moments where, I think I talked about it on last week's show, certainly somewhere else, but I just don't feel like playing very much right now. I'm not into it. I have a lot of anxiety right now. I'm trying to take like my CBD and like my, all of the rest, and my meds, obviously, but just feeling like anxious and in my head. So I've been really looking for ways to calm down and just be at peace and when I'm not working. And so what I've been doing is just doing a lot of cataloging of my GI Joes and all of that at night for like hours, and I'll put on my headphones and listen to like these YouTube channels that I shouldn't be listening to or watching. Like there's this one called Fresh and Fit, which is like for like it's like this podcast in Miami of like, you know, hot people that like, you know, it's like totally above my head, but it's interesting to see how these people live. And then I brought up Kevin Samuels before, which is like for a black audience basically, or mostly. And I just love that dude's show. I think it's fucking hysterical, even though I don't know if it's supposed to be. So I've just been listening. So I've just been finding relaxation and solace in different ways outside of games. And I'm looking forward to jumping back in because I'm starting to feel that hunger again, which happens after a week or two of being away, where you're looking forward to playing certain things. And I think the game that will fully bring me back is Tales, but that's a while, so, 5 or 6 weeks away. All right, boys, let's get into the news. Some big news this week, especially for PlayStation, some positive news. Let's start with number 1. PlayStation 5 has surpassed another sales milestone. According to a press release from Sony, the console, launched in November of 2020, has surpassed 10 million units sold. Veronica Rogers, PlayStation's SVP of Global Sales and Business Ops, noted in part, quote, "Pushing through supply challenges and a global pandemic, we're proud to have delivered a transformational gaming experience that is captivating players around the world," end quote. Meanwhile, the brand's CEO, the sometimes controversial Jim Ryan, said in part, quote, "While PS5 has reached more households faster than any of our previous consoles, we still have a lot of work ahead of us as demand for PS5 continues to outstrip supply. I want gamers to know that while we continue to face unique challenges throughout the world that affect our industry and many others, improving inventory levels has remained a top priority for SIE," end quote. At 10 million sold in about 8 months on the market, PlayStation 5 has already outsold consoles like Saturn, Dreamcast, and TurboGrafx-16, and sets Sega's original console, the Master System, in its sight next, along with the Wii U, which it should pass in lifetime sales in the next few months. For its part, Microsoft's rival Xbox Series X and S consoles are also selling at a brisk pace. According to Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella, quote, "The Xbox Series S and X are our fastest selling consoles ever, with more consoles sold life to date than any previous generation during the same time frame. We're all in on games," end quote. Microsoft continues to stubbornly avoid talking specific numbers. It hasn't regularly spoken about hardware sales since its monthly tradition back in the Xbox 360 days. But in the no guesses place Xbox Series X and S at around 6.5 million sold, 35% behind PS5. Like Sony, Microsoft also laments supply issues, though evidence indicates that these issues appear to be lifting, at least when it comes to Xbox Series S, which is fairly easy to find. Xbox's 3 previous consoles, the original Xbox from 2001, 2005's Xbox 360, and 2013's Xbox One, sold 24 million, 84 million, and 50 million, respectively. PS1, PS2, PS3, and PS4 sold 102 million, 155 million, 87 million, and 115 million, respectively. And PS4 itself is still selling alongside PS5. Brock Smith wrote into us and said, "When Sony said they projected to sell 14 million consoles before year's end, I chuffed and said no way, but they announced 10 million sold before the end of July, and now I must say, it seems my dismissiveness was premature. What say you all?" Chris, what do you think about these strong sales numbers, the fastest selling PlayStation and maybe home console ever so far?
Yeah, I mean, it's surprising given, the just the state of the world and even just like with the supply constraints taken into account, the fact that they've been able to do this is actually like super impressive. I wonder how long this will carry, but there's no doubt that those are impressive. That's impressive shit. Like, sincerely, like especially when you consider the fact that like I feel like this happens every time a new console comes out, but like everybody always says it's like who's really gonna buy a new console? It's like it turns out everybody. Yeah. it turns out literally all people, like basically. So it's cool.
What do you think, Dustin, about these strong sales?
Yeah, I mean, Chris hit it totally right on the head with the fact that they were able to do this during not only COVID, but in addition to chip shortage, which is in relation to COVID. I mean, think about the chip shortage and the fact that it's not just PlayStation or game consoles. Like, it's so bad that it's affected the auto industry very heavily, to the point where the car that I bought last year used is worth more now than what I bought it for, because the car market is so fucked up. and some of that maybe, but not exactly chip related, but I know a lot of it is.
No, it is. As far as I know, there are like tens of thousands of cars in like Michigan and other places sitting on racetracks and shit, waiting for like chips. They're done. Right. Yeah.
So,
and I'm sorry. I also want to say that I think a lot of those companies furloughed their workers because they don't need to build anymore. They can't.
Right.
Yeah.
So the fact that Sony was able to pull off that many is just awesome. You got to wonder how many would they have sold if there was no supply, or would have just all been sold through faster. You got to imagine that they may have lost some sales in the fact that some people were like, well, I can buy an Xbox today, and I'm tired of waiting to get a PS5. Maybe I'll get one at some other point. Surely that's happened. So they're probably like, very happy, popping champagne or whatever, but they're also in the back of their mind like, what if we could have just gotten a few more,
Definitely. I am amazed about this from multiple angles. And I do, before I go in deeper into my own thoughts, I did want to bring in two other questions. And I wanted to read these at the same time because they are opposite sides of the same coin. Bobby Rigo wrote in and said, "Hey boys, Sony just recently announced that 10 million PlayStation 5s have been sold. While that's undoubtedly impressive, I think it's more important to look at how many of those PS5s are actually in the hands of the players. It's neither a secret nor a surprise that scalpers and bots have been scooping them up the literal second they're alive through retailers. I'd be interested to see how many PSN accounts have registered with a PlayStation 5. Thoughts?" And then Tristan Wilbur says, "With the news of 10 million PS5 consoles sold, how long can we expect until the narrative that scalpers are stealing all the consoles go away? Every single announcement or sales report is met with passive-aggressive comments saying how most of those are from scalpers, even though it's realistically likely barely a fraction. I'm convinced that even after supply is satiated, people will continue this narrative that Sony is somehow not keeping up, despite the sales numbers still being truly impressive, getting into the millions of gamers' homes." Thoughts? So I wanted to bring this up because I see this argument too, and I just want to remind people, and I'm not attacking Bobby here specifically, but this argument that scalpers are coming in and taking these consoles and then not reselling them is brain dead. It makes no sense. People need to stop making the argument. It makes no sense. PlayStation 5s are getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper on the aftermarket. Why would you hold it? It's not like you're buying a toy and keeping it in a package, or like a valuable set of Pokemon cards or Magic the Gathering cards or something. It is an electronic. It's one of the few things that needs to be sold quickly or it loses its value. So I think the scalper thing, while not overstated from people's frustration and maybe not being mitigated well enough, scalpers might be getting them, but they're selling them.
Yeah,
they're still selling them. We hear from people all the time buying them from scalpers. So it's not that scalpers are accounting for X, Y, or Z. We don't know. It's just like people think that the scalpers are buying them and then just sitting on them. It doesn't make any fucking sense. So I wanted to say that from the top. But these numbers are impressive. We've already said it from a device point of view, manufacturer, the chip shortages, COVID itself, the fractured nature of how COVID forced companies to begin dealing with all these things. I mean, they had to put the console out essentially not together as a company, like they're from their houses and shit. I mean, that's a lot. And I remember reading, I think it was Jim Ryan gave an interview about how like engineers had to figure this shit out from afar. Like they can't work together in their lab environments and all of the rest. So from that perspective, it's amazing too. And then I think it's even more amazing because I don't think there's any must-have games on PlayStation 5. And I've said that before. Like, I think PlayStation 5 has great games. I think it's an awesome machine. I own 2. But there's 3 in this house because Micah has one as well. But I still feel like that's maybe the most impressive thing of all is that there's nothing that I think is like a killer app. And in fact, we'll talk about sales numbers in a little while where it seems like PS5's audience agrees, which makes it even weirder. So from all of those perspectives, I think it's notable. 10 million is huge. It'll pass Wii U in lifetime sales in under a year. And we'll be trucking on to pass. I think next up would be like GameCube and Xbox in the early to mid 20s will be the next one that they pass. And congratulations to Microsoft too. They're doing great. It's just that, again, the numbers comparatively are not suitable for them to announce them outright, which is why they don't and why people have to kind of do the math and figure it out themselves. And the number 6.5 is the number that I think a lot of people are kind of settling on. So 35% distant. And I brought up the numbers also, if you want to compare the two brands, the highest selling Xbox console has never sold better than the lowest selling PlayStation console. And so it's like comparing two different things, and I think people need to start isolating and not alienating, but isolating and segregating these two ideas. Microsoft, it seems like clearly they want subscriptions. I don't think they care too much about the hardware. And I've been saying that over and over again. And maybe if the hardware continues to lag, in quotes, maybe they'll come over to PlayStation. Like I've been predicting that they will make a catered Game Pass for PlayStation in the future years. All right. There was some data that was included in this, guys, about software. I wanted to read that as well. Number 2. In addition to outrageously strong hardware numbers, Sony also reported software numbers, one of our very first glimpses into how PlayStation 5 games in particular are selling. The biggest game of the bunch is no doubt the PlayStation 5 launch game Spider-Man Miles Morales, which was also released on PlayStation 4. Insomniac's superhero title has sold more than 6.5 million copies. Meanwhile, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, also from Insomniac, pushed 1.1 million copies in its first 6 weeks on PlayStation 5. Sony's newest studio, Housemarque, delivered the cult hit PlayStation 5 exclusive shooter Returnal in late April, and that game is nearing 600,000 copies sold. And finally, San Diego Studios' annualized baseball game MLB The Show 21 has passed 2 million copies sold, with more than 2 million additional players via Xbox Game Pass. Sony's second-party partner Kojima Productions likewise revealed sales of its 2019 PlayStation 4 exclusive that later came to PC, Death Stranding. The Unusual Delivery game has surpassed 5 million copies across both platforms, with the director's cut en route to PlayStation 5 this September. In their promotional items announcing these various sales numbers, Sony seems to be hyping up the following upcoming titles the most: God of War, Gran Turismo 7, Horizon Forbidden West, Battlefield 2042, Deathloop, Far Cry 6, and Kena Bridge of Spirits, which we'll talk about in a moment. Chris, what do you think about these sales numbers? We know that the Miles Morales sales actually skew to PlayStation 5, which is interesting, but I can't help but notice that the attach rate is still pretty poor for some of these biggest games. I mean, 1 in 20 people that own a PS5 played Returnal, 1 in 10 played Ratchet. I mean, those are very strong numbers now, but will be less so later on. So that's what makes it so curious to me about how well this console is selling.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about inertia before, and we've talked about just like the general goodwill that people had in the PS4 generation kind of transferring over to PS5 with almost very little needed to convince them to continue. I would imagine that that's probably a lot to do with it. I do think a lot of the people who jumped in to the PS4 ecosystem were fairly new. You know, I think obviously PlayStation had, a pretty storied history and a lot of fans and a lot of players before, but like the PS4 was the first time like a lot of people who were like all in on 360 jumped over. So I think those people are the people that those are probably the people that determine the games that sell particularly well. So a lot of games that were new on PS4 are probably the ones that are going to start really having that high attach rate. I think it's going to be stuff like, the sequel to God of War. I think the sequel to Horizon. I think those games that were like kind of fresh to not only the PlayStation side, but also really indicative of why people were starting to like jump in. Those are going to be the games that I think have a higher attach rate than stuff like Ratchet and Clank that's a little bit more storied. Although it is shocking, like Miles Morales, I would have expected to, that's the one that's kind of weird because Spider-Man's like universal, like everybody loves Spider-Man. So I don't know. I think that's definitely part of it, though.
Dustin, I wanted to kick this one over to you because when I read this from Andrew Duda, I had one of those like moments. People aren't watching the video where I was like, "Oh, wait a minute, this is a really good point." He says, "Hey guys, quick question. With the recent release of sales numbers and Sony revealing Returnal has only sold 560,000 copies, do you think Sony considers this game a success? For a niche brand new IP, I would say it's pretty solid, but in comparison to other SIE titles, it's extremely low. Also, what does this mean for Demon's Souls, as they weren't even listed in the sales numbers at all? Is it because Bluepoint is still independent? Thanks for everything and keep that great quality content flowing." I don't think so. Returnal was made by an independent studio at the time as well, and those sales come from their independent section. Again, there's no difference, according to Herman Hulst, between second and first party. So I don't think that is what it is. I think that Demon's Souls probably didn't sell very well. And I'm wondering that when I read that, I was like, oh shit, Andrew, you're right. Where is Demon's Souls? If Demon's Souls sold even 500,000 copies you would think they would say something. So my theory is that maybe the sales are pretty soft, they must be softer than Returnal.
See,
sure.
I can't imagine that that's the case. This was the only PS5 exclusive at launch, and many people bought it and maybe didn't like it, but they bought it for that reason at launch. I mean, maybe I really can't see that game not Returnal doing better than that game. That doesn't line up. But I mean, I guess it's possible. They're not talking about it for some reason. Sony always comes out to swing their dick around when they can. So why wouldn't they unless it was? So that is a very good question that Andrew brings up that is very confusing to me.
Are you saying people didn't like Demon Souls remake?
I'm saying that there's probably a lot of people that bought it and then they're like, I don't like Souls games.
I see.
Or they realized, because it was so, I mean, any game that's a launch game is going to be appealing in one way or another to the broad market of everyone who buys it. Because I don't know, at least for me, when a new console comes out, I'm way more likely to buy a game I may not be into due to the lack of variety that's available. So
Right.
I would imagine there's a lot of people that are like, well, I don't like Dark Souls, or I didn't like Bloodborne, but it's the only true PS5 exclusive, and I'm looking for stuff to play on my new console. So I would have thought that it would have sold really high because of that. Maybe not, though.
I don't know. I feel like it's just one of those games that has a reputation for being like kind of hard, and I feel like a lot of people probably just didn't want that. I feel like probably a lot of people were probably like, Astro's pretty cool, or like I think Miles Morales is the thing that most people were, it's definitely more accessible. And we have to also remember that like Demon Souls is like a remake of like a pretty ancient game, and it looks gorgeous, but a lot of those old problems are still there. Like a lot of the frustrations from like back when that game was like fresh and new, those are still present in the remake. It's not necessarily this modernized version outside of just the visuals and like obviously the loading times. It's like, obviously that's a big thing too.
So this would be very just light data to look at, but just something to consider. PSN profiles, we can see how many PSN profile people have logged in. There are 42,493 game owners on PSN profiles for Demon Souls. Returnal has 19,596. Again, that's not indicative of sales by any means, but we can at least
something though
look into that.
Well, yeah, you're right. It is peculiar, and maybe it is because it's second party, but I don't know. But it's a good point, Andrew. Very well taken. The other thing I wanted to ask here, Chris, was what did you think of Death Stranding sales numbers? A lot of people pointed this at me being like, see, Death Stranding sold well. It sold 5 million copies. And I'm like, I don't know that I consider that incredibly strong. It's weaker than Metal Gear. But also, it's limited to one console, but that console is more than 100 million of them. It's also on PC. Well, what do you make of those sales? Do you think that, because people are like, what do you think of this? And I'm like, this is kind of where I expected it to be in the several million range.
Yeah, I don't think it's like particularly. There's no way it was going to outsell Metal Gear. I mean, come on, like that's a storied franchise with like a lot of history that everybody loves, and that there's sequels, and that's a whole different thing than like a new IP, especially one as unorthodox and strange as Death Stranding. I am a little surprised to see that it sold as much as it did. 5 million copies plus for a game that is pretty strange. That's kind of cool. Like a lot of that might have been name recognition, fair enough, but like part of me is also wondering like how many people really understand even who Kojima is outside of, like I wonder how many people who aren't industry people or like who aren't like in the know bought Death Stranding and liked it. Like that to me is like a really interesting, like people who had no connection to Kojima at all. Like I'm so curious about those people, but I'm surprised and a little impressed at those numbers, but I'm not necessarily like blown away by them. I think it sold well enough for an experimental title like that. But I don't know if I have that much else to say about it. I think it's just, I love Death Stranding, so I'm happy that it sold as many as it did.
Me too. I can kind of see both both why Sony wouldn't necessarily pursue another project with Kojima. I mean, those aren't great numbers for their first party games, although, I mean, it's a second party game, but in comparison, of course. But Dustin, what do you think about the sales numbers for Death Stranding? Is that where you expected it to be?
They are higher than I expected. That's the question, Colin. You bring up like what Sony would expect from something like that. Obviously, budget probably comes into it as well. But like, I don't think that Returnal is going to sell 6 million copies. So, does that mean anything? I don't know. That's the thing, is that we have this narrative about it not doing well and that maybe Sony wouldn't want to work with them, but I don't really know if that would be true.
I don't know. I mean, we might find out soon that they are working together. So.
Right.
Yeah.
The other question here comes from Corey Christensen, who says, with the player base at 4 million total due in part to Game Pass, should the next MLB The Show launch on PS Now for a trial period of 1 month? This would increase the player base, and after the month is over, it would encourage people buying the game. What do you all think about my proposal? Well, I'm interested in this because the sales, I thought this was went in the other direction, where I was like, the show only sold 2 million copies. It's like the third or fourth best selling game of the year. So I don't know exactly how this is being counted, but it seems like there's an equivalent number of people playing on Xbox for free and PlayStation for a charge. And that tells me that there's no reason for them to make it free, because I would have thought that the cut-in would have been much more severe than that. And that couple million people are still willing to buy that game when they can go. I mean, it's not boundaryless, but you can just go to this other console and play it for free. I think that's pretty telling. So I think Sony's pleased with that too. So I would say no to that. For the technically unsophisticated among us, the use of a virtual private network, or VPN, may not be immediately clear. But once you understand the basics, the potential of using a VPN will become immediately clear to you. And it's there that my friends at NordVPN can help. A virtual private network has myriad purposes. At its most basic level, a VPN can give you extra layers of digital protection, putting up a barrier around your computer, phone, or tablet on public Wi-Fi, or adding additional encryption to the comings and goings on your connection. But fans of Sacred Symbols will likely be most drawn to what I would consider the ultimate use of NordVPN: spoofing your location. The reality is, by using NordVPN, you can trick your internet connection into thinking you're somewhere else entirely, in one of 59 countries around the world. Why would you want to do this? It's easy. Your internet connection is geotagged, meaning that if you're in, say, America, you can't watch the British version of Netflix or a Japanese streaming service or buy the newest PC game for cheap because it's only on sale in another location. NordVPN lets you circumvent all of that. It's awesome. I love VPNs for sports too, since so many subscription services and streams are sealed off to foreign parts of the world. But if you're an anime fan, a music fan, a gamer, or just about anyone else who interfaces with entertainment, NordVPN is an attractive solution to the problems of digital borders when it comes to purchasing and streaming content. And it's not like you're just locked into one fake location either. You can be in Europe 1 minute and Asia the next. You can watch the Premier League from the UK and then watch Japanese anime in its native language and then download a game for sale on a South American server. It's pretty dope, and NordVPN makes it all possible, so give it a try. Go to nordvpn.com/symbolsvpn. That's nordvpn.com/SYMBOLSVPN. Or use the code SymbolsVPN at checkout to get a 2-year NordVPN plan plus a bonus gift with a huge discount. Better yet, you can sign up without risk, since there's a 30-day money-back guarantee. And one NordVPN subscription can be active on 6 different devices, from computers to phones to smart TVs and even your own router. So get started today at nordvpn.com/symbolsvpn, or go to nordvpn.com and use the checkout code SymbolsVPN. Guys, let's go to number 3. I'm excited about this one. I want to see what you guys think of this too. There's a lot to this. Number 3. A new firmware update for PlayStation 5 is currently in closed beta, and it sounds like it may just be the update we've all been waiting for. According to website The Verge, the biggest update for many will no doubt be that access to the PS5's M2 SSD slot will now be made available. What's amazing about that is that should you use an M2 SSD in your PS5, you may need to heat sink it separately. So this seems to be something that's well above most users' heads. So this was one major thing, is that it's going to create like some sort of heat disruption for you, which means that I would never even know what to do with that. As The Verge relays word from Sony, the company, quote, cannot guarantee that all M2 SSD devices meeting the described specifications will work with your console, end quote. Sony recommends Gen 4 drives at 5,500 megs a second bandwidth, and even then, Sony says it might not work as quickly as their internal drive. Website Push Square points out that the Seagate Fire CUDA 530 is the first PS5 compatible SSD out of the gate, but there's more to this update, including the long-awaited and seemingly inevitable update to trophies. PlayStation 5's trophy list is horrific, unreadable, unusable, and actually detractive from the experience of earning them. Sony listened and is now allowing trophies to be read the old-fashioned way, in a list. And better yet, there will now be a built-in trophy tracker that will allow players to track 5 trophies at a time by setting things up in the PS5's control center. You can pin trophy information that's tracked to your screen, so it always overlays as you're playing if you need further details. The so-called game base is also experiencing a major update, and the control center interface will allow more personalization and customization too. And if you're a PS Now subscriber, you can now toggle between 720p and 1080p resolutions, likely a nod to those experiencing connection issues while streaming. So there's a lot here. Chris, what do you think about the SSD slot being made available now to others, but Sony's kind of insistence that maybe you shouldn't fuck with it?
Yeah, it's a little not exactly the news that like everything else about this item in the news like is a lot more yay, you know, like a lot more good than this. This is a very weird way of doing it. I don't know if I'm excited about this. I don't know if I'll even mess around with this, because I don't know if I've built PCs and shit, but I don't know. Like when it comes to a console that is hard to get, I don't know if I want to fuck with it to the degree that like I might just disrupt it in some major way and have it bricked and have to send it back and have to deal with a bend situation. So like, I don't know. I would have expected this to be a little bit more graceful than it is. Granted, closed beta, but like still like very bizarre. Everything else seems great though.
Dustin, what do you make about what's being announced here? I'm most intrigued because it's most out of my wheelhouse with the SSD.
Right.
It seems, this is why I was wondering why they didn't just make PS5 more modular. If they're going to require some sort of sophistication with technology, then you could have gone even further than allow, like, remember we were talking about like, well, you don't want people to be fucking with your console. You don't want to fuck with your console. You don't know what you're doing, but they're literally saying, well, do what you got to do. I mean, I guess we don't recommend it. You know, and
right.
Then our shit works better and all this. So I'm just like, why wouldn't you just have broken this thing wider open? That was my first instinct. Of course, I don't really know what I'm talking about with technology, so I leave it to you.
People are, dunking on this a little bit about how difficult, or the fact that there's only one known compatible drive. It doesn't surprise me that this is the case at all. They showed us very early on that their SSD is very bespoke and sophisticated. And even to the point that they showed out like the way that it's laid out on the motherboard is to streamline things for higher bandwidth. So, yeah, it takes very specific drives, and there is probably very few that are going to work. And even then, some of them are like, we're not even sure if it's going to work as fast as our very custom bespoke SSD. That makes sense to me. So, and that's the other thing people were talking about. Oh, $250, that's $50 more than the Series X one. I'm like, yeah, it's also a lot faster than the Series X one. So, sorry. I think that they probably thought that the timeline would be accelerated on these better SSDs, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's also pandemic related, that maybe that the R&D or like getting these newer drives just isn't quite been at the timeline they expected. But I would not put anything in your PS5 that Sony doesn't certify and say this is a good drive to use. And I think that especially as this beta comes out and people, the beta testers themselves start fucking around and putting stuff in, Sony's going to get a lot more data and more drives, known working drives, will become available. Part of me almost wonders if it's so specific, why doesn't Sony partner with some of these SSD, and maybe they are behind the scenes, and make, hey, this is, you go to the PlayStation section of Target or Amazon, whatever, and there is a drive on the shelf there that it's got PlayStation's logo on it. It can say partner or Seagate, PlayStation, whatever. That seems like the most logical thing, so people don't have to play these games. But again, I'm just not surprised. But again, it doesn't sound. I'm not surprised that Sony is doing it this way either, just because they seem to be kind of disorganized about everything also.
I'm a little mystified. I don't know. I don't want to go down this road again, but I am a little mystified by why people are so desperate for more space already.
Yeah.
I was reading something where someone was like, even with a drive twice as big, you can only fit maybe 20 games on it. I'm like, why the fuck do you need 20 games on your hard drive right now? I don't understand how schizophrenic some people are out there where you need to have 20 games at the ready at all times. I think people are sweating some things that don't matter. These are really expensive upgrades too. Just be more thoughtful with how you store your games and delete them when you're done. I love deleting shit off my hard drive. And I've never had any issues yet with PS5 running out of space. I used to have issues with PS4 because you remember PS4 used to cache deletions and then you'd have to, it wouldn't count that space would be available and you had to restart your PS4 to count that space as emptied and shit. Which is why you needed twice as much space to copy PS4 games because it would take the package file and then unzip it. It was so weird. You don't have to do any of that shit on PS5. So there's not even really an excuse anymore where people used to get really frustrated or they're like, I have 300 gigabytes. Like, why can't I download Call of Duty in this case? Because they need 600 gigabytes for them to make the package. But we will keep an eye on this, see what happens. I know you guys don't care, but I am incredibly pleased about the trophy updates. I'm so pleased because they heard that this was urgent and they did it quickly. And it lets me know that they realize this is... I remember I said it, I was like, I don't know who made this interface, but it's someone who doesn't play games to earn trophies. Because I would rather just have PSN profiles on my fucking laptop than have to go into that chart. And so we've been saying before that underneath the PS5's glossy OS is the PS4 OS. And I assume they're just going to point to the trophy list. That trophy list, which will be nice. So, well done. Thank you for listening, Sony. And we have no information on either the name of the firmware update or when that will be available publicly. Probably not for a while, I would assume, because they probably are going to have a lot of hardware kinks to work out.
I think that trophy tracker is cool, too, to be honest.
Yeah, that's a good point as well. Yeah, you can track up to 5 active trophies, which is cool, and it'll keep the information emblazoned on your screen if you want it to, and all of this. This is the realization of what they've been doing around the edges with the game help videos and all the rest. They're there. They just needed to make it presentationally coherent. And now they are, hopefully. So
good.
All right, number 4. I wanted to call this one out just because people are looking forward to this game. And a sad bit of news, particularly for those looking for something to play on PlayStation 5, an upcoming game has been slightly delayed. Kenna Bridge of Spirits has been knocked out of its August 24th release date and will now launch on both PS4 and PS5 on September 21st. The slight delay was announced via the official Twitter account of the game's developer, Ember Lab, and was a choice made as the team, quote, feels the extra time is critical to ensure the best experience possible, end quote. First revealed in 2020, the timed console exclusive is the first game from Ember Lab, and it can best be described as a third-person action game with some typical RPG elements. I think this game looks great. I'm excited about it. It's a delay of less than a month. Dustin, are you in on this game? I feel like this is a game you would enjoy.
Yeah, I saw a little bit of gameplay just like a week or two ago, and it looks still very charming and very, very cute. I'm definitely interested in it. It sucks because this was the game that I was planning to play in August that I was looking forward to, and now it's almost like I don't know of any new releases that I'm super pumped for in August. There's probably something I'm forgetting about, but you know what? That's fine. Like we always say the same thing, whatever time they need, that's always better than having it be bad.
Agreed. I don't want to see any more of the game, so I'm avoiding at all costs any more video footage of this game. So I'm in. It's fine if it's delayed. Chris, are you looking forward to Kenna at all?
Yeah. I actually didn't realize it was that close, though. Like, I've actually been actively, not paying attention to release dates because I know that they're just fleeting at this point. So, I'll just hear about a game and, if it's, 2 weeks out from launch, it's oh, cool, exciting. But there's no such thing, in my opinion, as a delay that makes the game worse. So... whatever time they need, it doesn't seem like it's that big of a delay, Seems
several weeks.
Yeah, it's just a few weeks, so looks like it's probably going to. I would imagine it's probably going to hit in September. I don't imagine it'll be delayed again. Could be wrong. That could age poorly, but it looks cool. I like the art style. I'm looking forward to it. I'm like you though. I don't need to see any more of it. I don't know if I'm necessarily pumped about it, but it definitely looks unique enough and interesting enough as far in the the PlayStation ecosystem that I'm I want to play this, and I want it to be good. So whatever extra time they need is all good by me.
Yeah, and it's worth noting, as I said earlier, this is a game Sony is kind of dumping some marketing into and acquired timed exclusivity for, likely funded some of the games. So yeah, it's something they believe in, and that means something, I guess, too. So we'll keep an eye out for Ember Lab's game in September. Number 5, a week or two ago, we learned that WB-owned developer NetherRealm would be ending its DLC support for Mortal Kombat 11, which came to PlayStation 4 back in 2019. Now we know just how well the game sold, making it somewhat surprising the studio is so eager to move on. The title has surpassed a staggering 12 million copies sold. That makes it the best-selling Mortal Kombat game ever released, an impressive feat for a series that started way back in 1992 in arcades, coming the following year to SNES and Genesis. This also means it's one of the top 5 best-selling fighting games ever, joining esteemed peers in the genre, including the beloved Street Fighter II and multiple Smash Brothers entries. The series as a whole stands at 73 million copies sold, which actually means that it's the best-selling fighting series ever made, surpassing Super Smash Brothers, and with these newest numbers, while remaining comfortably ahead of both Street Fighter and Tekken. This is incredible. I actually had no idea that, I mean, you see it chart month after month after month after month on the MPDs and on the PSN charts. That's a no-joke game, and I'm actually kind of curious why they're walking away from it now, because that's really high. I wonder if they're looking at it saying, like, we can almost annualize fighting games like others are annualizing sports games. But Chris, what do you make of these Mortal Kombat sales figures from NetherRealm?
I'm very surprised because Mortal Kombat to me was always like of the games that have been mentioned here so far, like Tekken and Street Fighter and Super Smash Brothers. Mortal Kombat is probably like my least favorite of them.
Me too.
So it's actually like mind-blowing that it's that far ahead of so many of them, and that it's ahead of Smash Brothers as a series is pretty, although there have been fewer Smash Brothers in fairness, but that's nothing to scoff at. That's wild. Like, I really had that was, I feel like when you know, Colin, when you were talking about Crash Bandicoot and you were like, nah, it's probably nobody cares about this.
Right.
That's how I feel. Like, I'm just like, I feel like I was completely out of the loop, and now I've just been like dragged into this world that I don't recognize, where everybody apparently and their fucking grandparents have been playing Mortal Kombat this whole time. I just haven't seen it.
It is incredible. Like, it goes to show you, it goes both ways, because you had mentioned earlier too, I mean, we were talking about Demon's Souls and Returnal and all of that, and we often bring up Metroid, which is a series that has sold like 15 million copies in totality or something, but the way it's talked about in hardcore circles, you would think it was like 100 million seller, and Mortal Kombat's almost the exact opposite, because I know that it's got hardcore bona fides, but I also know that it's definitely a peripheral FGC game compared to the core 2D Japanese games and a couple of others. So yeah, when I saw that number, I was like, that's nuts. And then when I saw 73 million copies sold in totality, it's like, holy shit, man, that's more than Street Fighter. Dustin, what do you think about Mortal Kombat 11's sales figures and them walking away from the game? I'm a little surprised by that too.
Right. Well, I mean, the big rumor right now is that their next project is actually something with Marvel, which would be very interesting because they already have previous a history with DC doing Injustice games. But, you know, Mortal Kombat it's huge. They just had that movie recently, which I don't know how the movie did, but there's been Mortal Kombat movies from years ago, and they've done like animated stuff. So it definitely has like a broad multimedia appeal as well. To see this one do so well is just interesting in the fact they kind of rebooted the series back on 360 when they just called it Mortal Kombat. And then they did Mortal Kombat X. Then, of course, now Mortal Kombat 11. It seems to be this resurgent because it wasn't always doing so hot. Like some of those like random like PS1 and PS2 versions, definitely it was not on top as far as like the fighting game community and stuff like that.
Well, congratulations to NetherRealm, WB. Ed Boon, congratulations to you, of course. Number 6, longtime PlayStation employee, executive, and one-time CEO of the brand, Shawn Layden, has taken a new job. Better yet, he's talking again. For starters, the somewhat boring stuff. Layden has joined the advisory board of Streamline Media Group, a somewhat boring-sounding company that nonetheless has larger aspirations embedded in its name. Gaming is multifaceted and involves a lot of different moving parts. Gaming also intersects with entertainment and the wider realm of leisure, and Streamline is attempting to streamline that. In accompanying interviews, including one on gamesindustry.biz, however, it appears Layden is continuing to bang the drum he was hitting on his way out of Sony. Games are too expensive to make, and all that comes with that. He said in part, quote, "With each console generation, the cost of games goes up 2 times. So PS4 games were 100 million to 150 million. It stands to reason that PS5 games, when they hit their stride, will be in excess of $200 million. It's going to be very difficult for more than a handful of large players to compete in that space. During that time, we also have seen more consolidation. Consolidation is the enemy of diversity in some ways. It takes a lot of playing pieces off the table as they grow into these larger conglomerates. And again, we end up with this problem with diversity. Music on a revenue basis is probably 1/5 of the game space, but their cultural impact is 100 times what gaming is. Right now, we are narrowing ourselves down into genres and sequels in certain types of games. Favorites of my own, like Parappa and Vib Ribbon, those things don't seem to get the chance to come out on stage. That's bad for the industry and bad for fans. Over time, that leads to a crumbling of the games industry if we keep talking to the same people and telling the same stories in the same way," end quote. Layden also explicitly discusses what I've repeatedly said on the show and heard or read nowhere else, that the recent $10 increase in AAA game prices doesn't even account for inflationary pressure over the time prices weren't raised and will barely make a dent in the problems he describes. I have not seen that said anywhere until I read it from Shawn Layden. I've been saying that consistently. That, I mean, whether or not it doesn't matter how you feel about game pricing. It's just the knowledge that that $10 increase is almost irrelevant at this point.
Yeah.
There's a lot here. And I have a few questions to accompany us, but I'll let us kind of break into this however we want. Dustin, I'll go to you first. What do you think about what Shawn Layden had to say? I know a lot of people were stuck on his thing about Game Pass and how they needed like 500 million subscribers or whatever to break even. I think he was being obviously hyperbolic with that, but I'm glad he spoke about that as well. It stands to reason that the man who was head of PlayStation for years would have an idea about the solvency and the idea of solvency with a product like that. And I think it's something to pay attention to. But there's plenty to say here, so I leave it to you.
I think it's interesting that he brings up the music industry as a point of comparison, and that we don't just want the games industry as the huge moneymaker, but also the cultural impact. Those things go hand in hand, and he's kind of talking about, the consolidation, and somewhat if they continue to chase just the dollar, right? The sequels, the franchises, eventually this is a losing race for everybody. You would think at some point people are like, enough, we need new ideas and new games in order to keep things fresh. And with that, you have to make risks and do weird small stuff. And the curious part about all this is that Sony, like specifically, I think Herman Hulst recently said, like, oh no, we're still committed to doing creative and new ideas. It's like, okay, do it then. Like, where are the smaller games? Where are the games that the traditional games they would bring out at like a PSX or something that isn't going to be the multi-million seller that brings, I don't know, is culture the right word to the PlayStation brand, brings variety? Those things are important. Those are the things that endear people to the brand and allow for a more creative environment. So I'm on board with Shawn Layden and what he's saying here. I agree with him. The question, though, is we're still just so early into this generation. What will the future look like? Is Sony... Is Herman Hulst specifically, is he being true in the fact that there are smaller things that are in the vein of something like a Proper Rapper coming? Or is it the doom and gloom that we previously talked about of a world where The Last of Us is getting remade?
I think we know where this is all going with Sony. But Chris, I'm curious what you make of this. I feel like there's something about Layden beating this drum, because it does sound like a canary in the coal mine, the losing game that Dustin was describing. And I also like that his solution, if you read about this company, and I read a little bit about it, it's a horrible name, but that he's advising and kind of what their intent is, it seems like it's to broaden the base of license, projected license appeal, so that if you have license X and you can make a video game and then get a TV show and a movie or whatever the case might be, you can kind of pool this money in such a way that the cost of everything will be more streamlined and become cheaper. So it is clever, but What do you make about his kind of his doom and gloom about creativity and money?
I mean, I think he's right. I think you see a lot of. I mean, we've talked about we've talked a lot on this show about the variety of PlayStation titles, specifically first party for games that we love, by the way, that are very, very good, and how it is the over the shoulder third person high fidelity action adventure like cinematic presentation game has been sold to us over and over again. Granted, very different, and they're all very good, but I noticed this years ago, like that there was some kind of, I don't know, just like a very samey feeling to a lot of titles, and like, yeah, we got some weird stuff every now and again. We'd get a Death Stranding, which was also just that, but like with a weird execution. And I'm sure that we're going to get some smaller titles that are interesting, and I'm sure we're going to get some weird experiments. Lord knows, maybe that's what this Abandoned thing is. I don't know. Like, who knows? But I do think there is a danger in consolidation, not necessarily as far as, like, acquisition, but in as far as, like, when you see a title and you're like, oh, we need to do that. That's what we need to do. It's what happened with Battle Royale. It's why so many games look like Fortnite now, and because everybody's chasing the same dollar. There's like not enough people there to really like. They already have a George, dude. Like we've been saying that for years too. Right. It is a big problem, and I think it is interesting that he's talking about this. I do think that the music industry question is interesting though, or like how he brought up how like music has like a greater impact on our culture than video games do, but I don't know if that's necessarily the right way to look at it, because games are so interactive in a way that a lot of other mediums just aren't. Music is very passive. It can be interactive as well, but they are inherently passive. Even a movie, for as much as you can engage with it on a mental level, it's passive entertainment. Television is passive entertainment. Everything else that has a great cultural impact has to be passive, because it needs to be it needs to set the stage for what's going on. It can't be like interactive. I don't know if something like The Last of Us can have as big a cultural impact as a lot of albums. I don't know if that's possible, because games aren't a part of everything else like music is. Like, you need music in games. Like, you need that. Like, that's... It's a very, I don't know the solution to that. I don't know like necessarily how he would think about that, or like what he would think about that, but I think looking at it through the lens of other industries isn't the way to go. I think it's just looking at it from a lens of variety is good, and we need as much of it as possible if we want to maintain the interest that we have now, or we want to keep that going. Because otherwise, what are we going to have? Like Fortnite a million times?
If you're lucky. I still always think about, remember we were just talking shit about, we were walking to the diner in LA and we were talking shit about Fortnite and how no one will shut up about Fortnite. And not 5 seconds later, a kid and his mom walked down the sidewalk and he's like talking about Fortnite. And I was like, that's unbelievable.
It was insane. Yeah. But even we see that now, even just the XDefiant stuff, like, oh, hey, here's Tom Clancy. We got a Tom Clancy license. It's unique and interesting, but people want this. So let's make this. And it's like at a certain point, everybody's going to get bored because everything is the same. You need stuff like the odd Splinter Cell. You need stuff like Psychonauts. You need stuff like Vib Ribbon and like just these weird things. Stanley Parable. Just like bizarre things that get people talking, even if they don't break like millions of sales. It's part of the deep lore that gets people sucked in, to like a deeper rabbit hole. It's the same reason why, somebody who's into like classic rock or something, you delve into rock, that's like the breadth of genre fusing and the breadth of variety in that. Like, you go to Swedish metal or like melodic hardcore or just like weird stuff like King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard and all these like weird like microtonal. You need those big franchises to pull people in, but like if you don't have anything deeper than that, if you don't have anything deeper than the substanceless, like, free-to-play, mode that everybody's doing, then people get bored and they dip out because they need that depth to keep going. And I think he's totally right.
Yeah, very well said.
I just totally ranted for a long time.
No, that's great. I mean, that's what the show's for. You can rant and rave all you want. That's great. I think you're absolutely right. And it's funny because Matthew O'Sullivan did write into us on Patreon about that music reference. And I was going to read your letter, Matthew, but we'll just reference it now. And in the sense that I agree with you. It's apples and oranges. But it did resonate with me in some way where I'm like, you're right. Like, how can we fix this? Why can't games be taken more seriously? We've talked about something like the HBO Last of Us series, that could be a bridge for people and other things. I think we have to just continue to be patient and also realize that the financial investment is substantially larger in games than it is in music, unless you're going to live shows and stuff. Thus, of course, the capital is going to be totally different. An album, I don't know that I'm talking out of school to say that an album has never cost $100 million to make or $50 million to make ever.
No.
So maybe the most ostentatious production is tens of millions of dollars, maybe, I would assume, something like that, with all your hiring and your bands and all, whatever. So I don't know. But I did want to bring up a couple of these other things here. Turd Ferguson wrote in. He said, hey guys, if publishers are so worried about rising costs of game development, why do they continue to open studios in places like California, which has some of the highest cost of living and taxes anywhere in the world? Why not open more studios in Eastern Europe or Southeast Asia instead, where they can get way more bang for the buck? The annual salary of one programmer in LA can probably get you 4 or 5 in Malaysia or Poland. To me, the whole games are too expensive to make argument is partly self-inflicted. These publishers can very easily lower their development costs by simply not making games in the most expensive cities and countries in the world. You're wrong, unfortunately, because I don't think you're thinking about this the proper way. Now, there's plenty of talent, gaming talent in Malaysia. There are Malaysian studios. There's plenty of talent, as we know, in Poland. And I always think that it's very wise to go to places and investigate where the talent is, right? We were really excited that, for instance, or not excited, but talking about, like, PlayStation has never really breached in a second-party capacity the Canadian market. And now they're going to do that with multiple studios, with the announcements they've made. So it's always good to go where right, like, there are only a few North Carolina studios, like Red Storm, Insomniac obviously has a studio out there, Epic. So you go there to tap into that market. Everyone that works in games lives in California for the most part. People are going to open studios there because it's easiest to court. And unfortunately, this makes it harder to move, right? But you're not going to go make a studio in Montana because then you have to get people to go there. And and studios even have a difficult time dealing with this in, like, Bend is in the middle of Oregon. That's not a studio that a lot of people are going to go work for. It's not. You have to, like, pick up your whole life, go to Oregon, and there's nothing else for you. If you lost your job at Bend, you're fucked. But if you have a game job in Seattle or a game job in LA or San Francisco, Tokyo, London, Paris, I mean, these are just New York, even to a degree, in Chicago. These are places that make a lot more sense. So, Turd, you're not thinking about it right. There's talent everywhere you go, but you can't court talent to places people don't want to live. Yeah. And people don't want to live, unfortunately. I mean, I think Virginia is great, but you're not going to open a big studio in Richmond because you got to get people to go, and you're not going to get the best talent. So just think about that. Because games are expensive to make, but where they're being made is not really the biggest deal. Remember that Remedy is working in first world Europe, and they made a AAA game for $25 million. Meanwhile, Cyberpunk 2077 is a massive blunder, well-funded in Poland. Mm-hmm. So don't overthink it too much from that regard. The other thing I wanted to talk about that we haven't talked about too much that he talked about here is consolidation. This is, of course, a drum I've been beating and a horse I've been beating to death on the show, and I'm glad he brought it up here as well. Corey Brown wrote in and said, "My sweet boys, some recent acquisition speculation has mentioned how Microsoft would be smart to go after a company like Focus Home Interactive. Can you explain why Microsoft, already a publisher, would get out of acquiring another pure publisher like this who may work with a stable of developers regularly but doesn't actually own any of them? At least not that I know of. Is it IP, multi-game contractual relationships with these developers? Thanks. And even though they're not on the show, I just wanted to welcome Cog and Micah to the Last Stand team. So happy for your growth and success. Thank you so much for that. We've been getting a lot of kind words about Cog and Micah, and we really do appreciate that. So the first thing you want to note is that Focus Home Interactive is a growing entity. They do own some studios like Team 17, I think. So that's number one. But number two, I don't know what they get out of it. And I am starting to get more and more concerned about the consolidation. And I'm concerned about Microsoft coming into this. And did we discuss it on this show about, is there going to be a price to pay? Is Microsoft going to push it too far? It was on some show we were talking about. Or is that Sacred Symbols Plus maybe?
I think we talked about it. That was you and I. But I can't remember what show.
Yeah, I think it was Sacred Symbols. It must have been the Colin show or whatever. And the idea was like, is Microsoft going to push this to such a degree where people are like, what are you doing? Why do you need Focus Home Interactive? Like, are you kidding me? What, you need Focus Home Interactive? You can't just leave them alone. They don't own anything. So I agree that the consolidation and just the throwing of money around is actually making the problem worse. And Microsoft is actually making the problem worse. I mean, whether or not you think games are too expensive or not, there's no doubt that Microsoft vastly overpaid for Bethesda and is setting game pricing on an unsustainable trajectory, in my opinion, with Game Pass. And this is exactly what Shawn Layden is doing as well. So it's not like what they're doing is great for the consumer, and it's fun and it's exciting to examine and pontificate about, but it has real lasting ramifications. And I frankly think that that's what Shawn Layden is trying to say. You can't get into this situation where no one can afford to be in this space anymore. And I highly recommend people go read this interview. And there's others. I think he gave a few, but he's obviously on his media tour, so he's going to say a lot of the same stuff. Number 7, Sony has revealed the free PlayStation Plus slate of games for August of 2021, and it's not very impressive. If you're on PlayStation 5, you're going to get a game we were actually already told we were getting during the last State of Play stream, Hunter's Arena Legends. The online-centric PvP and PvE hack-and-slash title is also on PlayStation 4 and is free for PS Plus users across both platforms. Over on PlayStation 4, players will receive 2 additional games. The first is the Plants vs. Zombies online shooter Battle for Neighborville, which will first launch on PS4 back in 2019. It's the third of the 3D Plants vs. Zombies spin-offs that began way back in 2014 with Garden Warfare on PS3 and PS4, and continued with the sequel to that game. Excuse me. Sneeze. Sequel to that game, 2016's Garden Warfare 2 on PlayStation 4. The other PS4 freebie is Tennis World Tour 2, which came out in 2020 by way of developer Breakpoint Studio. These games will be free for active PS Plus subscribers from August 3rd until September 6th, and you should claim them and add them to your download list, even if you don't intend on playing them now, as you may want to later. Dustin, what do you make about this rather unimpressive roster?
Yeah, I mean, they can't all be great. It's one of those things where I feel like there's been a lot of really good months, but I don't know. Surely some, younger kid or something is looking at Garden Warfare and is like, awesome. And he also likes tennis. Like this lineup appeals to someone. It just doesn't appeal to us. I don't know. To me, it's like one of those things where it's like, it's okay. There's other things to play. They've had a lot of really good months where I've been like Plague Tale. I got to play through all of that last month. I thought that was fantastic. Fantastic choice, even if the game was mid at points. So I don't know. We'll see.
I think I was going to say, I think I'm just looking at the historic data right now. There's a great PlayStation.fandom.com. They have a list of PlayStation Plus games that were free like throughout the years, going back all the way to 2009, I guess it would be, or 2010. And this is definitely the worst month of the year, no doubt. Because here are some of the games we've gotten free on PS Plus this year so far, in addition to Plague Tale: Maneater, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, Greedfall, Control, Concrete Genie, Destruction All-Stars, Maquette, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Remnant from the Ashes, Farpoint, Oddworld Soulstorm, Days Gone, Zombie Army 4, Wreckfest, Battlefield 5, Stranded Deep, Operation Tango, Star Wars Squadrons, and Virtua Fighter 4 or 5 rather was free for 2 months. So certainly the weakest month. But Chris, what do you make of this particular list? The only thing I would say, I feel like I'm being harsh on Xbox this podcast. That's not my intention. Is that compare these games to the games with gold every month, and you'll feel like you're eating like a king.
Yeah, no, games with gold is a joke. Like nobody, I don't even check them. I don't even check them anymore. It's like it's not even worth my time.
They should just get rid of it.
They should. I don't know why they just.
Yeah.
It's just like a blemish. Like they're doing. They have so much goodwill with Game Pass that it's
Right.
almost like why even bother like doing it. But yeah, I don't know. Like I'm not necessarily starving for a new thing to play every single month. So like it doesn't bother me when there's like a month that's like we got a weak month, because there have definitely been strong months that, you know, I knew were strong quality wise, but didn't necessarily appeal to me as far as something as I wanted to play it, you know, like, so I don't know. You just have to accept that if you're going to get some free stuff every now and again, you know, free stuff, obviously it's a subscription thing, but it's not always going to be exactly what you want. That's fine. You can have a weak month, because there's chances are this is somebody's this is like at least one weird psycho's perfect month. Like, I don't know what kind of lunatic is like losing their minds over, you know, over this month, but you know, who knows?
All right, let's see what's next here on the list. Oh, let's see. Oh, Paul, we already talked about your question. I'm sorry. Paul Dunn. Number 8. According to a report on website Axios, Electronic Arts' vaunted and all-important EA Sports brand is beginning a new chapter of growth. As the article aptly notes, quote, sports gaming doesn't get much press, but it's a surging market with increased competition and lots of players up for grabs, end quote. EA's own statistics, according to Axios, note that the publisher reaches 230 million sports gamers and is aggressively seeking to double that number. A big piece of this will be the inherent socialization that comes along with watching, playing, and enjoying sports. General manager of EA Sports, Daryl Holt, told the publication in part, quote, we're creating very much a social aspect and social networks within our games, end quote. But it's brand aggressiveness that will continue to be at the heart of desired growth. FIFA, Madden, NFL, and NHL, EA Sports' trinity, will continue unabated. But as we already know, EA Sports is going to tap back into baseball, golf, college football, and more, re-upped its valuable UFC license, and bought all of Codemasters, which specializes in racing games, which they consider sports games. This is all relevant as EA Sports tapped out of a lot of these subgenres over the past decade or more. EA's MLB-branded baseball games ceased in 2007, falling first to rival 2K's baseball games, and then to Sony's The Show powerhouse franchise. Likewise, EA's PGA series, once helmed by Tiger Woods, has been dormant for 6 years, and Tiger Woods himself has gone to rival 2K for their new golf series. And EA's NBA Live series, beleaguered and abandoned with sporadic releases over the last decade, is seeking to return too, though there's nothing specifically in the cards yet. An interesting fact about NBA Live is that EA has canceled 5 of the last 10 core releases in the series, including NBA Elite 12 and NBA Live 13, 17, 20, and 21. You may recall that NBA Live 13 was canceled after going gold and being printed, and so there are rare and very valuable copies of it in the wild. I remember us getting it at IGN. After they didn't come in cases, but it was the printed disc that came in like little sleeves. And we're like, oh shit, this game doesn't really even exist. I suspect you guys don't have much to say about this, but I'll just add in to this that this GM, Daryl Holt of EA Sports, had mentioned specifically that they are not going to go to the annualization for their sports games. Not a huge surprise, but he had some marketing speak about how annualization makes sense, considering annualization also happens in sports generally. Like every season is a new season. Why wouldn't there be a new game for that season? I kind of get that argument, I guess, but it's different than what Konami's doing with PES. So anyway, some information there if you're interested. EA Sports looking to double themselves. I can move on. You guys don't have anything to say about this, I assume.
Yeah.
Number 9. Back in 2019, a studio called 1047 Games released a free-to-play FPS on PC called Splitgate. It has since become quite popular and is on the verge of being released on both PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5. Well, was on the verge anyway, because these releases have been delayed. Why? Because the game is too damn popular. Here's the gist. Splitgate opened itself up recently to a console beta that instituted full cross-platform play. However, demand for the beta was enormous. More than 2 million people crushed the game's servers, forcing its small team to scramble, pushing its game's launch just a few weeks into August. According to website IGN, the 1047 Games team raised $10 million in private capital to tend just to the servers, and the team is working to make the appropriate fixes. The open beta will rage on all the while, however, under extended terms. The studio hopes that not releasing the full game and instead keeping smaller launches contained within the beta will allow them to scale more appropriately. Look for the full launch on both PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 by the end of August. Alejandro Blanco wrote in and said, hello, Sacred Crew. This question is tailored to Chris, but feel free to chime in. Chris, have you tried Splitgate or seen how much it's blown up? I have been having a blast with this game, and it's a really nice, and it feels like a really nice successor to Halo 3's gameplay until we get Infinite. I know this is a PlayStation podcast, but Splitgate is also available on PlayStation consoles, and it's the closest thing to Halo there. Have a great rest of your week. What do you have to say about this, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen... I remember when this first came out, and I took a look at it. I didn't play it, not for lack of interest. I just think I just didn't fucking... I don't think I had the time to play it. But it looks interesting. Like, it's an interesting premise. Like, I get, like, oh, it's like Portal. It's like an arena shooter mixed with Portal. Like, it's cool. Because Portal was, like, just such a neat... That's such a neat gameplay mechanic that I feel is, like, severely, like... It's actually shockingly underutilized, considering how cool it was when they did it in Portal 1 and Portal 2. But, I don't know. I feel like I have my shooters, you know? Like, I've already got Destiny. I jump into Battlefield every now and again. I think I'm just sort of set, you know? And I already have, like, this one specific one that I'm looking forward to, and it's Infinite. And I don't mind waiting for something that I think will be a little bit more in line than something like this. It looks a little too chaotic for me. Like, the whole reason why I like arena shooters is because there is some level of predictability and some level of, like, rules, and this one just looks like people are popping up out of the floor and shit. It's just like, I don't know. It looks a little too chaotic for me, but it does look fun. Maybe I'll try it out. I didn't realize it was going into beta on PlayStation. Maybe
it's supposed to roll right into the public release to a full crossplay, so they have authorization there, which is nice.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I'm saying I'll probably jump into it. I didn't realize there was just like a free beta running around. I haven't jumped into it proper, so might be fun.
Dustin, I was going to ask you if you're into this.
So what's funny about this game is just that when we were doing press stuff at PAX, we were getting emails from them daily. It was like, come preview Splitgate. It's Halo meets Portal. And it always said that in the subject. And we were like kind of annoyed by it. Like, we were making fun of it because, dude, Colin, you've gotten these press emails before, and it's like a Dark Souls, Metroidvania, roguelike-esque at booth whatever. It's just like, take like any amalgamation of words, like gaming buzzwords, and then like put them together, and then that's like your entire email box before PAX or whatever. And so we were laughing about this, but then like when we got there and we saw people playing, we're like, whoa, this game looks pretty cool. It has a pretty dedicated following. I played a little bit of it on PC probably about a year ago and thought it was fun. But like Chris said, the Portal element does make it a little chaotic. It makes it even confusing to do like strategies and stuff, just because there's, you know, portals all over the place that may like introduce this chaotic level. But I'm curious about how the game has progressed, and it's cool that it's finding its stride on PlayStation and on consoles. So I actually just downloaded the beta today, and I think it's live this weekend, and so it's clearly going to be the best beta playable this weekend. So that's what I'll be playing, and I'll be very, very happy there.
Fair enough.
I don't know, man. That design, like the whole Portal thing, is just like, because the whole point of like a lot of those games is just like you kind of understand where people might be, you know, at any given time. It's like, you know, that we start here. I know that if I'm in this section of the map, there's only so many people, and then like the second you could just appear like out of thin air, like on the other side, it's like it's like a panic attack. Like I don't know, like I'll jump into the beta though, as long as it's like around for a while. I think I assume it's probably going to be extended given the server issues, but yeah.
We have this question from Mike Ryan on Patreon. He says, hello, D between two thick C's. PlayStation really needs a multiplayer shooter, and we don't really have one right now. But have you guys been paying attention to what's been going on with Splitgate? This game basically plays like Halo, but has portal guns. It came out on PC in 2019, but the beta hit consoles and now has over 600,000 downloads across all platforms. More than that now. My question is this: is Sony paying attention? The game has been number one on the PlayStation Store for weeks now, so it's clear PlayStation players are hungry for a solid shooter. What is Sony doing about this gap in the genre? Are they just going to rely on third parties? Rumors point to SOCOM, but would one game or IP be enough? Thanks for the great content and stay safe. I thought about this too when I was reading about this about its meteoric rise. My suspicion is, and we've talked about this, is that Sony is in the works of trying to solve this problem. I do think SOCOM is going to come back, and I suspect that either Killzone or Resistance will come back too, but I think it's the one or two of these second-party games from Firewalk and whatever, Haven, like one of those games is going to be the big multiplayer game, I think, for them. And we're going to have to wait for that, but I suspect that they know full well what the hunger is, not only for these shooters, but free-to-play games and just massive demo scenes and all these kinds of things where you're exposed to more games, you're exposed to more ideas, and hopefully you spend more money on the platform from their perspective. So,
yeah,
no doubt about that. All right, we just have a couple more things to get through. Number 10, those specific details are scarce. It appears that EA-owned developer BioWare's once beloved Dragon Age franchise is being brought to Netflix in the form of a live-action show. Word comes by way of website Giant Freakin' Robot, which has a track record of nailing these sorts of predictions, and although they confirm that the show is in active development, there's little else to say, including who may be involved and what the timing of the project's launch will be. Netflix's interest in a Dragon Age show shouldn't come as much of a surprise, however, considering one of its most popular shows in recent years has been The Witcher, based on the gaming series, which itself is based on a Polish-language fantasy novel series. Dragon Age is very similar to The Witcher in myriad ways, and so there could be good value for their audience. Dragon Age, which began in late 2009 on PlayStation 3 with Dragon Age Origins, has been silent for years. A sequel came to PS3 in 2011, and both PS3 and PS4 were graced with the last entry, 2014's Dragon Age Inquisition. A new game is indeed in development at BioWare and is rumored for a 2023 launch, although little else is known about it. Chris, what do you think? I don't think any of us are really into Dragon Age. I always found it quite sterile, but it doesn't surprise me that Netflix would want this. If you find success with The Witcher, I assume you're going to take to this next high fantasy world.
Yeah. I mean, I've never really been that into Dragon Age either. I've never played any of them. They've just never appealed to me. Fantasy in general was just always this genre that it took me a long time to really get into it. Like, I liked Fable 2 and like Skyrim, obviously, but that was really it. Like, after I had played those, I was like, I kind of got my fill for years, and I kind of still, like, I'm fine. Like, I could go back into Skyrim right now and have a blast, like, and that's all I need. So Dragon Age just missed me. I've never been that interested in it, but like, yeah, I mean, with the success of, you know, even just stuff like Game of Thrones, you know, if you can nail yourself if you can find yourself an IP that has a lot of lore already, that has like an established IP that has a lot of fans that you can then just build something on top of, you'd be dumb not to do it. You know, it just makes a ton of sense. They're doing an Amazon Lord of the Rings series. The fantasy is the new thing. It's going to it's going to get overinvested, and we're all going to get sick of it real soon. But that's where we're headed, so it doesn't surprise me.
It's also costing Amazon hundreds of millions of dollars, which is fucking nuts.
Yeah,
for a series that was already done pretty capably by Peter Jackson, I think. Although, I guess this is the second age, or I don't know. I'm not even.
It's like a prequel series or something like that. Like, whatever. A little off topic, but like it makes sense that they would go after this. It's and also, by the way, makes sense that it's a TV show and not a movie. So
sure,
at least it's that.
Yeah, I would think that if they were going to try to do Dragon Age Origins, for instance, or something, they would need that. Because the cool thing about Origins, if you guys remember, was like, I think you could start as one of 6 players. They all had like their own prologue, and then you go from there into the game. But I never played the sequel, and because it looked bad. Inquisition, and I think Dragon Age Origins was not great either. But Inquisition, I actually bought during a sale a year or two ago. I don't know if I'll ever get to it or not. I'm just not that I don't find Dragon Age very appealing. Dustin, what do you think about Netflix kind of chasing this rumor anyway?
To me, Dragon Age, my experience with it, so I'll leave it at that. My experience, which is playing a little bit of Inquisition, then I've seen some of the earlier ones, but even then, I just feel like it just feels like pretty generic in the fantasy front, right? Like, to me, I'm like, why would this be the one that you want to pursue? Because what are you going to make a remake, a retelling in TV form of the first game? Are you going to do just something different in that world? And if so, like, I feel like you could have gone after something else. But I don't know. The optimist in me says that maybe there's some kind of thing where they're trying to do a show alongside a new game, which would be cool if you could tell a different story that relates to the game and doesn't necessarily retell it. A story that would be better told through TV. But I think that is wishful thinking because it's always not that.
Well, what do you think about this idea? This is getting a little crazy, but they can somehow tie the new game together with the TV show, and maybe there can be, because it's going to be probably a next-gen game, it'll be very impressive graphically, they'll probably have great motion capture. Wouldn't it be cool, maybe it'll be a little creepy, but where some of the characters from the game are actually in the show, in the real world, and maybe it's like a different story or like a different part of the kingdom or wherever it takes place, the world that they're in. That'd be kind of neat. And this actually, that actually speaks to the synthesis that Shawn Layden was talking about how do you leverage everything to make sense and be kind of symbiotic. And obviously, we give a lot of credit always to Remedy for trying to do this a lot with Control and Quantum Break and others, where you kind of have these disparate elements. But this would be even more extreme. I think that would be kind of neat. I doubt that would be it. But imagine a TV show that really compels you to play the game, that really compels you to watch the TV show, that really compels you to play the game, that really compels you to watch the TV show, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's what they're missing. I think even with The Witcher, we saw The Witcher bounce up in sales charts, which was awesome for them, but I think even that didn't have the effect. I mean, imagine if there was a Mass Effect TV show. How much that would inspire play, how much that would inspire creativity and imagination and all that. So maybe they could do something like that, but it's the wrong IP for me to really care about.
Yeah.
Finally, a wrap-up, number 11. Website Push Square reports isometric RPG Baldo, The Guardian Owls comes to PlayStation 4 on August 27th. Website Silicon Error reports Dungeon Crawler Mary Skelter Finale comes to PS4 on September 30th. Website Komatsu reports Survival RPG Chernobylite comes to PS4 on September 7th, while action game Lost in Random comes to both PS4 and PS5 on September 10th. Publisher Koei Tecmo confirmed that the port of the 2014 Wii U horror game Fatal Frame Maiden of Black Water comes to both PS4 and PS5 on October 28th. Toei Animation and publisher Bandai Namco have yet again delayed its Digimon game Digimon Survive. First announced in 2018 for a 2019 release, the game is now slated to launch in 2022. Long in development action RPG Crimson Desert, due out on PS4 and PS5, has been delayed for console launch indefinitely. It's unlikely we'll see the game before 2023. And finally, PC-centric battle royale game Nakara Blade Point, set for a launch on PC in the coming weeks, will also come to PlayStation 5 relatively soon, though a specific release date wasn't given. It's also noting that in the time we're recording, Annapurna Interactive, the publisher, did a small 30-minute event. So there's just a few items I want to add. That game about the cat, house cat, like the Stray, now has a release date of early 2022 for PS4 and PS5. Solar Ash comes to PS4 and PS5 on October 26th. And they announced a interactive poem. It says on Push Square, A Memoir Blue is an interactive poem devoid of words, hitting PS4 and PS5. So there's that as well. So we can keep an eye on all of that. All right, guys, as tradition dictates, 6 questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas from the audience on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. We'll start with Badly Brave, who wrote in and said, "Hey, CDC. With the lawsuit against Activision and concerns growing with China in the industry, I want to ask if you think people are beginning to grow more inclined to follow Colin's mantra of vote with your wallet. While I don't often choose to boycott games, I'm finally finding myself unable to support Activision's future products. I see more people than usually making the same choice, and I wonder if this is just a special instance or if we're trending towards a more morally aware gaming audience. Sorry for the long question, but curious to hear your thoughts on it. Have a great rest of your week, boys." So you guys might remember that at the top of the episode, I promised we would revisit this topic because I wanted to ask about consequences. And Chris, I'm curious, and I don't know how specific you want to be or not, or if you can be, because it might take a little bit of thought, but have you ever reacted to a brand where you're like, never again? And if so, can you think of the reason why that is? Because I've done that with a few brands, but it's just been like quality oriented. Like, I always make fun of Subway, which I think is like a horrible food. And I think at some point I used to eat there a lot out of college because it was cheap or whatever. And at some point I'm like, this sucks. I can't eat this anymore. And that was like 11 or 12 years ago. And I've just never eaten it again. So I've totally like thrown off, and I stopped eating Hot Pockets for like 15 years because I found one with like blue mold in it, and it like, you know, and that just ruined my life. So, but I've never, I don't think, taken any stances based on extraneous circumstances. I'm wondering where you stand on that.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever really done that either. I think for the most part, if you're offering a product that I like, I like it. You know, like I'm gonna grab it, or like if it's like food, I'll go get. Like I joked a lot about like, dude, if every New York pizza restaurant in the city was like had signs outside that was like Puerto Ricans not allowed, I would literally just wear a disguise and go in there. I sincerely, like, if something's good enough, I'll fucking listen, man, whatever. But I do think there is a degree where it's like, okay, what are you offering the community? Like, what are you offering your consumers, and how are you operating your business? And I think Blizzard is in this kind of unique position that I don't think I've seen many other companies in, where they're not offering their consumers all that much of anything, and their business is being conducted in a very, very overtly negative way. Because what is it? They had Warcraft 3 Reforged, which was like a mess. You know, and
wasn't there? Sorry to interrupt, but wasn't there also a story about how they were marketing that game knowing it wasn't ready and accepting pre-orders, understanding that it wasn't going to come out?
Yeah.
And all that? Yeah.
All sorts of shit. And even just back when Diablo 3 launched, and it had the auction house, and it was just a mess, and it didn't load for anybody, and just like Blizzard's been kind of like on a steep decline quality wise for what they've been able to offer their consumer base for a while. So this just adds more fuel to the fire, to the point where it's like, I could see much far easier now than previously, where somebody could be like, yeah, you know, fuck Blizzard. Like I don't think I'll support Blizzard anymore, because not only is it, you know, taking a stand, but it's also like easy, because they're not giving you a reason not to. You know, I think actually what's funny about this whole thing that happened with Activision and Blizzard in this lawsuit is 3 days before this lawsuit happened, or like 2 days, I can't remember. It's like a very short amount of time. The biggest World of Warcraft streamer left for Final Fantasy. That's why Final Fantasy had that huge uptick in like player base, because like the biggest WoW streamer on the I think in the world, I think Asmongold, I think his name. I'm not super sure, but he was like, I'm sick of Blizzard. Like I'm annoyed. I'm gonna go over to Final Fantasy, and then everybody went over to Final Fantasy, and 3 days later this lawsuit happened, and it's like, wow, dude, it's a mess. It's a mess over there.
It is.
And yeah, I can't think of a company where like it would break my heart to like for Bungie to do something that would be like, oh my god. I don't know sincerely if I could. It would have to be pretty egregious for me not to like still have interest in a new Bungie title. Like, I understand, because like there's a lot of games that come out that are like garbage and annoying, and like some things that get your hype like really high up, and then they come out and it's like really depressing, and it's like, oh my god, there's so few things that really grab you in such a way that to lose something like that from a studio that you respect and develop in such a way that like you just kind of have to. That's a tough situation to be put in. But I don't think Blizzard is in that situation, because I said it at the top of the show, they haven't done anything particularly great in a long time. Granted, I'm somebody who doesn't really care for Overwatch at all, so maybe some people might think, maybe 5 years ago they did something, or 6 years ago Overwatch came out and it was great and I loved it. But the last 5 years of Blizzard has been pretty fucking awful. It's been pretty not good for anyone. So I feel like it's just easy to not support Blizzard.
What do you think, Dustin?
It's difficult. Most people that play these games aren't even gonna know when the new Call of Duty comes out. Millions of people will buy this and not even think about the Activision branding on the box. They're just gonna buy it, and that'll be it. And so I'm kind of conflicted about this, because I do believe in the mantra that, you know, if you don't want to support something, then don't spend money on it. But At the same time, with something like this, it's like probably not going to make any difference just because of how popular some of these products are. So I don't know. It's a difficult choice. And to me, I don't know. You mentioned about boycotted, like how long have you boycotted or other stuff? It's like people may boycott the release of Diablo 2, the remake, right? There may be some people on Twitter that, or in our circles, that will do that, but people forget and then they move on. If this is settled and then nothing else comes up, then people will just move on. And that's, I mean, hopefully they're moving on because these issues are resolved, but sometimes it's just not in the zeitgeist anymore. We saw that a couple weeks ago with the Israel-Palestine thing. It was no longer the topic of conversation, and so no one cared about that conflict anymore. So I'm conflicted.
I have to say, I mean, I'm not conflicted. I mean, because the answer is I'm not going to boycott any video games. Mostly because I have to be honest. I mean, I'm not going to play many Activision Blizzard games anyway. I'm not going to play. I don't know what the last Blizzard game I even played was. And Activision very rarely play their games. But I want to speak for everyone, but I run a video game company and we cover video games. And I'm not going to say like, oh, I'm not going to buy like a Ubisoft game, or I'm not going to buy Far Cry 6 or something. I mean, I am going to buy Far Cry 6. It doesn't mean that I support what is going on at these companies, but the reality is that many people work on these games that didn't do anything wrong. Their jobs depend on these games as well. So you can make the argument that, yeah, the capitalists at the top of the company are reaping the benefits, but so too are all the teams that are going to sell millions of copies of their games. I've just never really been one to make those kinds of decisions. I will say that I encourage other people to do it. I've long encouraged people to boycott Electronic Arts, not because I will, but it's like everyone bitches about them so much, so stop buying their games, but you won't. And this goes back to what was going on with the Consumerist like 10 years ago when everyone was, they were beating Bank of America for worst company, but then they would sell like, 5 of the top 7 or 8 best-selling games were EA games. To me, I just encourage people to make the choices they want to make, but it all ties in. The activism and the political stuff and all of the stuff we talk about on the show, it all ties in because my whole thing is I would like for people to give us a choice, right? And we talk about, we have a choice inherently, but what I mean is, why doesn't Sony give us a choice to buy a Western-made or a fair-made PlayStation 5? Because I'd buy it, Or why doesn't The Gap or just some random clothes store, why don't they not stitch their shirts in Chinese factories and instead use fair labor and all of that? It's not really up to us on the bottom end of the scale to make adjustments. It's almost not really fair,
Yeah.
What's most fair is to expect the people at the top with the most means and the most ability to create different outcomes, to create different outcomes. And in the meantime, I think we have to just kind of support what we can on the bottom and support what we want to support on the bottom. Because someone had asked me, and it kind of brought me into like a mind cycle where I was thinking about this a lot. Someone had said, like, what if Tencent bought Patreon, right? And I was like, that's interesting. Let me think about that. And my first thought was like, well, that would never happen because Tencent would inherently ruin Patreon because people wouldn't be allowed to say a lot of things or do a lot of things probably anymore. But then my thought was, I was like, well, that's not really giving my company an option. We don't have any other way. We're established here for years. Like, we can't go anywhere. So my thought was like, I would just be as disruptive as possible from inside. Like, I would just make every thumbnail like a Taiwanese flag. And I would just do like all sorts of really ridiculous shit that had nothing to do with the show, just to constantly press them and just see and fuck with them from inside, like a disruption from inside the house. And I think that's what we're seeing with Activision and with Ubisoft's kind of their letters of support, their walkouts and all of the rest, where the inside is kind of fixing itself so that the bottom product that we interact with will be easier to support. And it's not necessarily fair to go to a person who, I mean, it is what it is. Maybe fair is not the right word, but it sucks to go to someone who's just plays Call of Duty every year and says like, well, now you can't because of all these. And it's like, well, you can. You have to make decisions and you have to assume and hope that the people who make the choices at the top are making the decisions that are right so that the consumer is impressed. Because it's the same thing I always think about with Chinese goods. It's like, I don't want PS5s to not be made in China anymore because they'll be more expensive. I'm simply asking for an option. I'm simply asking for you to give people the choice, because we give the people the choice with our merch. It's all made in America, right? Printed in America, shipped from America, all fairly. And we had a choice. And I said before, we could have sold really high-end goods that were awesome. I loved them, actually, but they were made in China. And I said, no, we're not selling them, because we're at the top of that chain and we can make the choice. Just like Patreon's at the top of their chain and they have to make the choice. And Activision and Blizzard's at the top of their chain and they make the choice, and Ubisoft makes the choice, and so on and so forth. I hope that makes sense to people. Makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Right. One thought that I just did want to add, Colin, you brought up how you won't be stopping buying any games, and I'm in agreement with you there. Like, I saw a few different press outlets say that they would not be covering Activision Blizzard games for the foreseeable future until their change is made. That's their prerogative to do that. But I also think that's ridiculous, because someone else is going to come in and scoop up those views. And it's weird, a weird line to cross when you have that level of activism journalism. Just very, very odd to me. And part of me is like, is that, I don't know, it's a really good thing to say on Twitter. And I guess that, you know, if you want to do that morally as a company, I guess, but I just found that incredibly weird. Did you see that also?
Yeah. And it's strange, because I just feel like, why is the pressure in these situations being put on the people that can exert the least amount of pressure, right? You're not seeing IGN and GameSpot making these proclamations. You're seeing, and no offense, I like Nick Calandra and others, but like, you're seeing the escapists, like companies that can benefit from the word of mouth of them doing that, where it's no injury. I would imagine any talk, and I'm sure knowing the activist class at IGN, that any talk of like, well, let's not cover Activision Blizzard, Pear's probably like, are you kidding me? You know, and it's also kind of strange because you see the escapists still covering the story, but not any of the games. I just feel like what we do is we cover games and we tell people about them, and we cover all of the news we can that encapsulates that, so you know what you need to know. But we can't pretend that Call of Duty doesn't exist, or that Assassin's Creed doesn't exist, or whatever comes out of Ubisoft if all this shit gets worse there.
Right.
So yeah, I have seen it.
I'll be playing Diablo 2, like, for sure.
You and I would assume Diablo 2 is gonna be one of the best selling games that month. I mean, and
oh yeah,
I'm not saying that because I think that sucks, but it just is the way it is. Just like,
yeah.
I mean, how many times do I have to say we can't live moral economic lives? I personally choose not to put myself in a box because I can't live up to the standard. So I might as well not even pretend, right? All I can do is that when I'm the man who makes the choice, like with our merch, I make the choice that makes it easiest for our audience. And that's all you can count on. If we all make those kinds of top-down decisions, then things will just get better by nature. The market will also correct, and these companies won't stay away from Activision for long, I assume.
Yeah, no.
All right. Let's move on to this next one from Harrison Stanley. Says, hey, CDC, I would just like to quickly play devil's advocate for XDefiant. While I agree the name is horrible and the marketing isn't great, I think there is room in the market for this game. Just last week, you guys were praising Konami for making PES free-to-play. I think you even mentioned that you wish Call of Duty would do the same. That's what XDefiant is. It's a free-to-play arena shooter with objective game modes. It seems to me that they are trying to compete with Call of Duty, and maybe if they are successful, we could see more competition in the genre. But what say you? Do you still think it's a horrible idea, or could you see this game being a success? Chris, we've had a week to think about XDefiant, maybe a week too long to think about XDefiant, but has your opinion changed on this at all as far as the angle this game takes? Because Harrison could be right. I mean, this game might make more tangible sense. I'm just put off by the aesthetic. I'm put off by the crowdedness of the space, but I'm also an outsider. Yeah. So I go to you for this.
Look, if they want to make a free-to-play Call of Duty, that's great. That's a great idea. And from the gameplay that I saw, it looks like a competent Call of Duty clone. You know, that's cool. Like it doesn't even look like it's not fun. Just why do you have to put two Splinter Cell people on the cover? Like, why do you got to do that? Why not just have it be a new IP with like a new aesthetic, new characters? You've clearly abandoned the Tom Clancy IP, like as far as like a guiding principle a long time ago. There's zombie aliens in Rainbow Six now. It's you've jumped the shark. It's gone. You've jumped the ocean basically. So I don't have a problem with the game design present or the premise of the game or them wanting to dip their toes into this genre or into this market. I think it makes a ton of sense. But to me, it's just annoying as somebody who really values Tom Clancy as an IP and also who just misses Splinter Cell to see that aesthetic just consistently like abused with no intention of making anything valuable out of that IP. Like, imagine like your dad dies and then like 5 years later some party clown comes into the door wearing your dad's clothes. Like, look, it's me, your dad. Don't you remember me? I'm fun and wacky. It's like, this is creepy, and just stop it. Just let Splinter Cell die. If you have no intention of using these IPs in the future, leave them alone or do something with them proper. Don't, like, wear their skin in this, like, weird Chuck E. Cheese carnival clown show and like expect me to like be excited about it, because nothing about XDefiant looks good because it has Tom Clancy IP in it. Everything that looks good about XDefiant is it looks like Call of Duty and it's free. And it looks competently made. And it doesn't look like it's broken or a mess or anything like that. The only thing that bothers me about it is that it's just disrespectful. And I'm not going to play it. Like, I won't. Like, it's annoying at this point.
Fair enough. Let's move on to this next one, Greg Wallace. I'll kick this one over to you, Dustin. Hey, CDC, I wanted to say I think you guys are underestimating the appeal of the Steam Deck, which was surprising given your support of the Vita. Well, the Vita had trophies. First, I think you have focused on AAA PC games when Steam is filled with indies like no other platform. My first thought when the Steam Deck was announced was playing games like Hades on the go without double dipping. Secondly, Valve has mentioned that while the device comes with SteamOS preloaded, it is possible to wipe that to get access to other storefronts through the regular windows, which means we should be able to access Microsoft Storefront with Game Pass without having to connect to the cloud. Not only that, with an open system, think of all the emulators and ROMs you can have on this thing. As a New Yorker who has seen some long commutes underground made better by Breath of the Wild, I'm interested to see where the device will go. So, Dustin, I must say, and Chris, we'll go to you too about this later, because I'm sure you have something to say about this too, but we've gotten a lot of pushback from the audience about our not dismissive, well, I don't think we were dismissive of Steam Deck, we're just being like, well, it exists. I think we gave it quite a bit of time, but people want it to have more credence. What say you?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like we didn't I'd have to listen back. I can't remember. I won't remember this show by the time we hit stop. So I don't remember what we said about Steam Deck. I don't feel like we were underestimating the appeal, but maybe we did. But anyway, I feel like it has tons of appeal, obviously. Like, it sold out all versions of it, like, very, very quickly. I think that what I had to say more was is just to have some reservations on what this thing's going to be able to do. We don't know. We haven't really seen it perform outside of like IGN filming some off-screen stuff of games that came to last gen in a lot of cases. So that's where my hesitancy is like, you know, pump the brakes. This thing isn't like it is a mini portable PC, but when you say PC, people assume like power, right? And it's like, this thing is very much a mobile platform and is going to do those things. I would also wonder about when he's talking about installing Windows and having Game Pass installed without having connect to the cloud. I'm curious about what that experience will actually be like. In fact, I don't know. Can you run Game Pass games on your PC without being connected to the internet? Like, is there like a DRM check there?
I think you can.
Yeah. It probably has to check in or something, I would assume.
Every once in a while. Yeah. Something.
I'm not super sure. I don't normally use Game Pass on PC, but
I
think there must be some way, right?
Yeah, and I mean, dude, he mentions the emulators too. Like, this thing's gonna be fucking awesome. It's gonna play more Nintendo games than the Switch will. Like, it's
the emulators sound the most. The emulating sounds most appealing to me as well.
Dude,
Right.
the Series S apparently is a crazy good emulator. Like,
Yeah.
it's it has me curious about it. But I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. But like,
No, go ahead. I think I've run out of steam here on this.
ha, nice.
Oh,
I think I don't know. Like, I don't think we underestimated so much as just it didn't necessarily appeal that much to any of us. Like, I think it's a cool piece of equipment. Like, the ability to just play like your entire Steam library on the go is amazing. I just think, like, I'm not really a portable guy in general. It's been a long time since I've like really carried a portable console around with me. I think maybe PSP was like the last time that I really carried something like that around. And even that thing was like, it was a bit big. So I didn't really like walk around with it. Like, I played it in bed, you know, that's what I used it for. I would be like in bed, I would play like Wipeout Pure before like I went to sleep or something. And that was what it was for. It was just like lulling me to sleep. So like, I'm not necessarily the audience for this. Even my Switch, I don't use it portably. Like, I'll bring it on a plane or something because that's like convenient. But I noticed recently, ever since I got a proper gaming laptop, I'll bring my Switch and my laptop for different reasons, and I'll always use my laptop because it's just way nicer of an experience on a plane. And I don't know, like, maybe this is me being a little bit spoiled from modern console hardware and modern PCs, but the fact that this thing is targeting 30 frames per second doesn't really excite me, especially given how low the resolution has to be for a portable screen. Like, I was hoping that like you could get away with like a really low resolution on a compact screen like that in exchange for a target of at least 60, you know. And I understand that might be like a lot asking from a portable machine. I fully acknowledge that, but that's, I think, what it would take to get me excited. Like, because that is the defining factor that like makes games enjoyable to me now. Like, sincerely, like when we were playing Ratchet and Clank and I dipped it back to fidelity mode and it was like 30 frames per second, I couldn't do it. It was abhorrent. Like, it was genuinely unplayable to me. And like, I wonder, having all this time spent on like PC and even now console games running at 60, I wonder if the portability of that would even be enough for me to supersede the fact that it was chugging visibly in front of my eyes. And granted, we don't know how everything runs on it. I would like to get my hands on this thing and like maybe test it out, because maybe I am overstating it. Maybe I am like being a little bit too doom and gloom, because it is a cool premise. It's a very cool idea. This is freedom like we've never had before in the portable space. But I just think, given its size, given the fact that it is a PC and that it comes along with these expectations of power and performance, and it's not going to meet those for every title that you could get, I'm just concerned. I think it's awesome technology. I think it's great that we're here because it means that we can get somewhere even cooler in the years to come. The fact that this is here means that there's going to be something crazier in like 4 years, and that's what I'm excited about. To me, it's like the phones that have the foldable glass and you can like fold them, like they're like the new Motorola Razr or whatever, that's just like opens. It's like, that's going to be really cool tech in like 3 years, and I'm going to want a phone like that. But for right now, I'll let the dust settle. I'll let Digital Foundry and all these other people get their hands on it, give the feedback necessary for Valve and whoever else is making these things to make the best possible version of it. But I want to just be on the record as saying I do think it's really cool that this technology is available to just consumers now. That's so sick.
For me, I mean, I agree. It's super cool. It's just too sophisticated. I think it's just too sophisticated for me. Like, what people are talking about doing with it, I'm like, I don't know, man. I just like out the box cool shit. I'm not into the you can make it wipe it and then put Windows on it and then download it. I'm not gonna. Come on, man.
Yeah,
I can barely make myself dinner. You're gonna like make me do all that. All right. Next one up here, Rob Kavazna wrote in and said, "Dear Conductor Colin, Caboose Chris, and Doodlebug Dustin, how about that trend announcement, huh? Now that Media Molecule is no longer making standalone games and just making games in Dreams, can we now conclude that Dreams is Sony's answer to Game Pass? Where else are you going to go for free with purchase day one first-party games? Ridiculous comparisons aside, are any of you excited for Tren or the other announced Media Molecule title, Ancient Dangers: A Bat's Tale? And more importantly, do you think this will move the needle for any creatives to go into Dreams and start making their own games?" I'd like to be wrong, but I don't see it. So I'm sure none of you have any idea most of none of you have any idea what's going on with Dreams, but yesterday DreamsCon 21 began, which was kind of this it's a cool idea. It's like a digital conference with people that are into Dreams. And they announced actually 2 in-game games, and they're calling them Media Molecule Originals with like a logo above them. Ancient Dangers, A Bat's Tale, and then, like we said, the game Tren, which was actually announced first. This is a cool idea. It's just that they need to allow these games to be exported out of Dreams. One, I don't understand why that's such a challenge. It actually really is mind-boggling. You don't have an exporter to have a final product that doesn't have to run on Dreams, because why wouldn't you just release these games on PSN? See, if they were doing that, then that would be cool. If it's like, oh, we're busy heightening our storefront from an independent level or a smaller level with smaller games that will be available for you to play without Dreams, with trophies and all of the rest. The one thing that I look at, though, is it just doesn't seem like there's very much interest in like the DreamsCon 21 thing has 29 likes and 4 comments on PlayStation Blog. You know, it's like, to put that into context, a day later they posted about Life is Strange True Colors and it has better numbers. It just seems like they're doing the right thing the wrong way. And I wonder what you think of this, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you in the sense that I just think this. Well, first of all, this needs to be on PC. That's it.
Yeah, we say that, of course, ad nauseum, because it's true.
Yeah, it just needs to be on PC. Like, I understand that there's probably like a problem there with like Move controller compatibility. I think that's probably like one of the main reasons why it's probably like a little bit tricky, because the DualSense or the DualShock doesn't necessarily function the same way on PC as it does with a PlayStation. I understand that it's probably like a huge hurdle, but it needs to be on PC. You need to be able to export these things. There needs to be, or if not, there needs to be some kind of storefront where people are incentivized to like go in there and like make cool shit and actually have because I feel like people are, if they're really using this for game design, it's like, it's probably a good learning tool and it's probably a good way to think about things and maybe draw up proof of concepts. But the second somebody has anything that's remotely like aha moment, the second anybody has like something that's like, ooh, that's a great idea, they're going to take what they made in Dreams and they're going to rebuild it in Unreal, or they're going to rebuild it in Unity, or they're going to rebuild it in any number of other engines that are more equipped to facilitate a reason to build things. And I don't know, like, I saw this DreamsCon thing. I saw like a little bit of the Bat game. I saw Tren, and it's cute. It's like, they don't look bad. It's just, I'm not gonna play these. Like, I'm not. I just wish it was easier for them. And I don't know what the obstacle is, because you'd assume that if they could export stuff, they would have done it by now. It's been out for a while, you know? I don't know what's going on with Dreams. I think it's a mistake to keep going with this game in the state that it's in. I think you need to make the changes that we're talking about. It needs to be on PC. You need to be able to export. There needs to be a storefront. Because as it stands right now, it reminds me of like, do you remember games like Music Maker on like PS2?
Yeah.
Like, these are like really weird, like, it's like a fun little like learning tool.
Well, you put like you put audio CDs in, right? And then like, isn't that?
It was just a disc from what I remember. I'm not sure. Like, this is
go
ancient.
ahead. I'm sorry.
This is like this is like 2003 maybe that I'm thinking. I barely remember my life at that point. But you know, those were fun games. Like, I enjoyed messing around with them and like learning how, like, you know, rhythms went together and like progressions and like you know, bars and like time signatures and stuff. But like, I'm not going to use Music Maker to make music. I'm going to go over to GarageBand or go over to Logic or go over to like any number of other programs that are like more equipped for me to actually do something with the stuff that I'm going to make. And that is the problem that Dreams finds itself in, where it's like, it wants to be something that it is not equipped to be. And it's frustrating because I think it could be. I think it genuinely could be that, because there's a lot of crazy cool shit in Dreams with barely any incentive to make it. So imagine if there was. Imagine if there was incentive for like young game developers to be like, let's gather together like every Friday and like build, like kind of like cooperate on this thing. And then sell it, and then maybe like somehow get enough money to like establish themselves as like a presence, and then like build their own stuff. That's a cool idea. but they can't do it in the state that they're in. Like, it's just not. It falls so short of its potential that it's almost sad, you know.
What do you think, Dustin, about this purgatory that we kind of find ourselves in?
I think Chris really summed it up very well, and to the point where I don't have much to add. It's all about the financial incentive. Like, Media Molecule is making very in-depth games because they have a financial incentive to do that. Go to the Dreams store. It's a bunch of abandoned projects. It's like that for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very well said. I still think Dreams is I'll keep saying it. I mean, I've been saying it's not really much of a risk. It's just a huge mistake. Like,
and dude, wasn't there like a Seinfeld game that was like made in Dreams or something? Am I wrong?
No, they like remade the apartment basically. Yeah.
Yeah, but they made that in Dreams, and then they made it again off Dreams so they could sell it.
Yeah, it's a waste of not even looking at the rips that they can get, but just like guys, I know there's Dreams believers out there, but you have to understand Dreams was announced in 2013, February of 2013, and has yet to materialize into anything that is worthwhile. And I don't know what the fuck they're doing. I don't know. And I frankly don't care. I want Media Molecule to make a game, like a real game. Jeff Scott wrote in and said, "Hey guys, has there ever been a game with a control scheme so bad that it ruined your enjoyment of the game? I'm currently replaying Battlefield Bad Company on the PS3, and my God, who thought it was a good idea to put shooting on the shoulder buttons in an FPS? There are literally buttons on the controller called triggers." This was a big thing in the PS3 era, as you might remember, because the triggers on Xbox 360's controllers were where that stuff was mathed. But for some reason, well, not some reason, the triggers on PS3's DualShock is horrible. So everything was on the R1 and L1 button. And I remember going to PS4 and actually having to adjust to not using those buttons anymore to shoot, because we were just so used to doing that. But, you know, the games that always come to mind for me, guys, when people ask this is Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks on DS were two games that I wanted to like so badly and was so disenchanted with having to use the stylus to control the games that I literally played them for a combined half an hour maybe, and was like, fuck it. I actually was so disappointed. I didn't even know that you had to use the stylus when I bought Phantom Hourglass, and was like, what? Like, couldn't believe it. And then, because I didn't watch any footage, I was like, oh yeah, I'm in. And I don't know why, because like that was a pretty weak time for Zelda. The Minish Cap was not very good. Twilight Princess wasn't very good. So I have no idea why I was into this game. And then Spirit Tracks came a couple of years later, and I actually don't know. I just was like, yeah, I'll buy it. And that was, I think, the last. No, I bought A Link Between Worlds, but I guess that was the second to last Zelda game I even purchased. No, I bought Breath of the Wild as well. I'm just lying at this point. Anyway, Dustin, what do you think about this question? Any games with control so bad that it ruined your enjoyment?
Yeah, so he specifically mentioned control scheme, but I couldn't think of anything as far as buttons, because usually I'm trying to think of a time I couldn't remap something. I could think specifically when Dishonored 2 came out, there was a big issue with the way the control sticks felt, like there was latency. And I remember playing it initially, I was like, oh, this is not feel good to control at all. To the point where I had done like a Redbox rental, and I was like, I'll probably buy this. And then I played this, like, no, this is not where it's at right now. And then eventually I went back to it, and I don't know if they ever got it quite right on consoles. The controls for that game are a little weird. It's very conflicting because I love that game, but I really fell in love with it on PC, where there wasn't that weird floaty control feeling.
What about you, Chris? Any thoughts of games that a game that came to mind for me, for instance, was Resistance Fall of Man, which was click to aim, very Halo-like, but I can't play like that anymore. Mm-hmm. And that wasn't able to be mapped out, but that's the only other thing that came to mind.
I'm very used to that. That never it bothers me in Call of Duty though, like, because I'm like in games, whenever there's like an animation to raise, like click feels wrong, but if it's just like a zoom, it's like it feels all right to me. Right. So like Resistance, I remember liking specifically because of that. I was like, this feels familiar, but I can't think of a game that I didn't immediately delete from my memory that this question would apply to. but I do think of games that like I liked despite being just so confused by their stupid control. Specifically, like Bulletstorm is a really good example of like a game that I genuinely like really enjoy and like really love from like a design perspective and just like a tonal and just like the amount of the creativity in the way that game was designed from just an FPS standpoint is like really, really awesome. Just like lifting people up and like style points and an FPS was like really cool. But I remember the control scheme for that game being so baffling and just for an FPS, it was like the dumbest. I think A was like melee or like X was melee or something like that. I was like, what? It was a really weird. I wonder if I could look it up because I remember being sincerely befuddled by just the control scheme that they use.
It's like, why wouldn't they just let you remap as well? That's always the thing that frustrates me. It's like, just let people map the buttons. What is the big deal? Hey, puppy. Like, what is
just like, dude, FPSs are so common on console. Like by the time that game came out, it's like, dude, copy everybody. Just do what everybody else does. Like, you don't need to be like super unique. It's so weird. It is so fucking rough.
All right, let's get into this final one. This is a funny one. Hakeem Hafke wrote in and said, "Hey CDC, just here to shame Colin for not updating his LinkedIn profile for over 6 years now. Seriously, Colin, update this. Maybe then Sony PR will start talking to you. Otherwise, that's all. Hope you're all having an exceptionally average day." Thank you, Hakeem. I don't remember how to log into LinkedIn. And since I don't and will probably, knock on wood, never be in the real world again in terms of jobs and stuff, I don't need a LinkedIn. I don't give a fuck what it says. Who cares? Dustin, have you edited your LinkedIn recently?
I believe that I have, but I don't know. I don't really know what the point of it is. Okay, wait. I do have it says executive producer at Last Stand Media, so I did update it since the rebrand and stuff. But I never ever get on there. So
I think I told you that I when I was at IGN, there was our CEO was like, I would never hire anyone without a LinkedIn profile, and he was just saying it to someone, and then I was like, oh no, and I went and made one. I'm looking at mine now, and it says January 2015 to present, co-founder and co-host. Kind of funny. So yeah, it's been a while. Chris, are you over there on the LinkedIn?
I don't know. I think I had one a long time ago, but there's no way it's up to date. Like, there's no fucking way.
We're gonna get so many requests for like so and so wants to join your network. I think I still get emails from that.
Oh, I have all my shit turned off, so I'm not gonna get any of that. You guys can say
I maybe should.
Yeah, there's no way that I remember my login information.
Oh yeah, also I think it's attached to my like kind of funny email, so that's also doesn't really.
Yeah, it's all gone. I've never needed it though, so like, well, who cares?
Yeah, it's LinkedIn. I don't know. I know a lot of people use it, but it's not for me. All right, well, that was it. That's all we have for our episode. What is this? 161 of Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. Chris, you have any closing thoughts?
I don't know. Can you guess? Yeah. I'm hungry as hell.
Well, we recorded 45 minutes late, and you were, like you said, you were ambitious enough to order, but nothing ever came to fruition. So
nothing ever came. I got a notification in the middle of recording. There was like your order has been canceled. And I was like, yeah, I figured.
Yeah, thank you guys.
After like 2 hours, yeah, that's my assumption.
Dustin, what's on your mind?
Not much. My folks are here for the weekend, so I'm thinking, it'll be a nice weekend. We're probably gonna eat lots of good food and hang out, and it's always nice. I like when my parents visit. It's very, very good time. So
that's cute.
Just a nice time to chill.
Nice. Well, have fun. I hope you guys enjoy it, and thank you all out there for your love, kindness, and support of Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, and all things Last Stand Media. We couldn't do it without your support on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. Leave us nice reviews on podcast services if you can as well. That's really appreciated. Subscribe wherever you can. Subscribe on YouTube. Watch our other content there. We thank you. We'll see you next time for more Sacred Symbols. Until then, goodbye.
See ya.
Take care, guys.
Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Colin's Last Stand LLC, and is proudly recorded in the USA. The show is conceived by, is written by, and is directed by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-hosts are Chris Raygun Maldonado and Dustin Furman. The show is produced by executive producer Dustin Furman. It's edited by associate producer Ben Smith. All of Last Stand's theme music is by my best friend, Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand shows, including Sacred Symbols, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer level on Patreon, our highest tier, and we're grateful for your thoughtful and kind contributions to our independent endeavor. Thank you.